Content warning. On this podcast, we discuss sensitive issues, including, but not limited to, swearing, tasteless jokes, situations of a sexual nature, and drug use. This podcast is not intended for children.
Hello and welcome to a special episode of BiblioWrecks. I'm Bugs.
And I'm Bam Bam.
And we are doing a Christmas special today that we are calling Bibliotomy. It's where we take a good book
That we like.
And talk about it. And mine is going to be a very detailed synopsis of Wicked by Gregory Maguire.
I know nothing about this piece of media.
I was about to ask you, tell us what your assumptions are coming in.
I know it's got something to do with The Wizard of Oz.
Okay, and you have seen the movie, The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
You haven't listened to the musical soundtrack.
No.
You haven't watched the musical.
I barely paid attention to the movie.
The movie of Wicked?
No, The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, okay. But you know Green Skin Evil Witch.
Yeah.
Okay. I did see the musical back in 2009 in Oklahoma. It was touring. I own the soundtrack. But this is not going to be a commentary on the differences between the musical and the book or anything about the musical at all.
That's good, because I would have nothing to add if we were talking about musicals.
That's why I wanted to kind of just establish my baseline going in. I am only looking at this as the book on its own, as a separate piece of media, but with the expectation, you know who the Wizard of Oz is, you know who the Wicked Witch of the West is, you probably saw Wizard of Oz when you were a little kid, and maybe you know a lot about the musical, maybe you know nothing. That won't really matter. This is a long book.
Yeah.
The audiobook was 18 hours. The book itself is 400 pages.
So is this like a retelling of The Wizard of Oz or a reimagining?
That's actually really an interesting part of this. Gregory Maguire was a children's author. And then he started contemplating the problem of evil and where does evil come from. And he started thinking, how could you take a character that is portrayed as purely evil?
Black and white evil, yeah.
Yeah, and give her a sympathetic backstory to where you could understand her point of view.
Very interesting.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, that's really good.
And so he grew up loving The Wizard of Oz, the movie, and then he read the books. And he said that L. Frank Baum's books were generally, all of the characters were well written and rounded, except for the Wicked Witch. She was just children's fairy tale evil character.
Yeah, no room for nuance for a villain in that era.
And so he set out to kind of examine, where does evil come from? What causes it? Can it be created? And what does that look like?
Like a nature versus nurture kind of argument?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. And of course she's born with green skin and no one else is. So she comes into the world with some deficiencies that make her more at risk of abuse.
Person different. We have to treat it different.
Yes. But the differences are deeper than you think.
Deeper than skin deep?
Yes, more further than skin deep.
Yeah.
So the prologue is about Elphaba. Elphaba is the first name of the Wicked Witch.
Okay, that's a Elphaba.
So he came up with the name by looking at L. Frank Baum's initials, LFB, and enunciating them, Elphaba.
Huh. Okay.
Which is how is it Baum or Braum? I think it's Baum. How the author of The Wizard of Oz came up with Oz. He was looking at a filing cabinet and he saw O to Z. And he thought, O-Z, Oz. That sounds like an interesting place.
Neat.
And so this was kind of a play on how that author came up with the name of Oz.
Just free associating names. Yeah, I'm all about it.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool, right? Elphaba is an adult during the prologue, and she is listening in on Dorothy and her companions talking to themselves on their way to the Emerald City to see the wizard. So in the movie The Wizard of Oz, she's like hiding on that like roof or something and like looking at them, and she's like spying on them, and they're talking to each other. And the Tin Man and Scarecrow are telling Dorothy about how wicked and scary the Witch of the West is. They're saying she was a hermaphrodite, or she's demon-possessed,
Jeez.
or she was a castrated male.
Huh.
Elphaba's shocked.
Yeah.
She's like, wait, what?
Usually when I hear ridiculous rumors about me, I'm just like, huh, how did that start?
That's exactly her reaction. She's shocked because she didn't know anyone was going around saying she was a hermaphrodite or castrated male.
Very genital focused.
Very much, yes.
Is there a reason for that, or is that just general, like, rumor?
It was just nasty rumors.
Okay.
She sees the shoes on Dorothy's feet and remembers that that's what she's after. She wants those shoes back. But a rainstorm is coming, so she has to fly away.
Right, because
water. And then we go to the beginning of the story. But I wanted to include the prologue because it kind of shows how that is what everyone sees her at. This faceless, nameless, evil being. And we are going to just make up rumors about what made her this thing. And they're terrifying Dorothy, who hasn't met the person or done anything, because in the movie, she tries to get the shoes back, but in the book, she doesn't interact with Dorothy until much later.
Oh.
Frex and Melina are Elphaba's parents, and Melina can tell that today's the day the baby is coming. But Frex is a preacher in the Unionist religion, and he needs to go argue with villagers about the clock of the time dragon. So he refuses to stay with her during her labor, and he goes off to preach.
Huh. This sounds very Wonderland, which I guess makes sense, but I was trying to make sense of that sentence, and I was like, no, you don't need to. You don't need to.
You really don't.
What's the Unionist religion?
It is the Catholic Church
Stand
in Oz.
Okay.
And then there's the pleasure religion, which is kind of like secularism, I think. And then there's pagan beliefs. But Lurlina is the magical witch, magical great fairy in Unionism. And they have very complex hierarchies and rules and texts and beliefs. Like the world building that goes into this book is so deep, I do not have the time to touch most of it. But the key idea is that Frex is a pious, conservative reverend who goes and preaches about the evils of the pleasure religion and TikTokism.
Oh. That's very funny now.
I know, it really is. He wrote this in 95 and would have had no idea.
Wow, this is that old?
This is that old.
That's crazy to me.
I know. Yes, this is very old.
So the Great Fairy is like a Mary, Mother of God sort of stand-in.
Yes, she also comes
real.
to Christmas. They have Lurlinmas, which is Christmas, and she scatters goodies out of her magic basket. So he kind of just combines all of our deities and holidays.
Yeah,
and
Santa,
makes them,
Jesus, all of it. Yeah, it's efficient.
It's very cool. And instead of monasteries, they have monks and, sisters who are nuns. So you have conflicting beliefs and conflicting religions. And Frex is just, I am a preacher. I have to go warn the flock against this pleasure religion.
And ignore my
birthing wife. 9.5 months pregnant wife who's about to burst.
I mean, it's realistic. I'd believe it.
Melina is a floozy. She sleeps with everyone. She's very affectionate to Frex, but he leaves her all the time to go preaching. And so she doesn't have anyone to sleep with when he's gone. And everyone kind of knows it. So we have conflict in the family there.
Right.
He is the strict religious, go and do things. And she has just always been a rebellious, wayward girl who is now pregnant and motherly and wanting his affection, wanting him to be there, and he's never there.
Yeah.
He goes off to town. Well, on his way to town, he asks some of the local villagers to please go check on his wife because she's about to pop.
Yeah, go do this for me.
Yeah.
Be a
And they
father
don't-
to my child while
They
you're
don't
at it.
like Melina, but they're like, mumble, 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 fine. The Clock of the Time Dragon is a mechanical theater that tells hidden truths. It's manned by a dwarf who, like, winds it up and sets it up, but it's magical in that it tells stories of people who are local to that village, and it reveals hidden things that they don't want known. In one village, the puppet told a story of a man who sneaks out on his wife to have sex with a woman and her daughter. The male puppet had a penis on his front and on his back, and both women had him at the same time. When they were done, they kneed him in his parts and left, and the mechanical dragon pointed at a fisherman and two women, and the crowd fell on them and beat them all up.
Jeez. This is a very aggressive form of civic entertainment.
Yeah, so it makes you feel like this is propaganda. Also, was it true? Like, they stripped him of his pants to see if he has a penis in the back. We're not told of the answer. The older woman got shunned and the younger daughter disappeared. And so it's like going from place to place, causing intense social disruption. And it's mechanical, but it's also magic.
It's
and
like a traveling show? Mm-hmm. Okay.
So it's like the size of a giraffe, and it's mechanical, but it also has these things, and everything that's painted in it, all the little puppets look exactly like the people that it's talking about.
Oh.
So the mechanical dragon, he's out there preaching, no, save your souls, look away. And they're like, haha, we're watching this cool thing. And
The Melina puppet is having an affair and getting pregnant?
actually, it shows a outwardly pious minister who secretly hides jewels in a chest and is then impaled, roasted, and fed to his congregation. And they know that means Frex, and they turn around and start trying to tear him to shreds. An old woman, like, takes pity on him and, like, grabs him by the scruff of the neck and hauls him away and hides him in a cellar. And he's like, please go save my wife. They're going to murder her.
Yeah, I mean, that's respectable, I guess.
Yeah,
He's concerned, at least.
Yeah. So we start off with this new technology, this new religion is bringing intense disruption wherever it goes. He is old and conservative, trying to say this is dangerous, but that is then used against him. We're never told he's hiding jewels in a chest.
Yeah, it could just be that kind of propaganda thing, and it's just specifically targeting people
Right.
of the opposing religion.
Right.
So
The old woman, sends some people to go check on Melina and the fisher women who are taking care of her. They run down, and the neighbors had given her herbs to make her fall asleep so she could have the baby without being in pain, which means she's unconscious, and they have to pull her onto a wagon and try to get away because all the villagers are heading out there to go murder her and burn down the house.
So is this like the Lollipop Guild? Is it a bunch of little people trying to drag a full-grown woman?
They are in Munchkin Land, but I think these ones are full-sized humans. I
Okay.
don't think they're the small Munchkinlanders. It didn't say. The Munchkinlanders who are small are like a separate type of human,
Okay.
and they do live in Munchkin Land, but also there's regular, like, adult human-sized humans, too. And Melina and Frex and Elphaba are all, like, standard human-sized. They get Melina onto a wagon, and they're, like, trying to just go away. So they head toward the village, because that's no one will think to look for them there. And they go into a little copse of trees. And inside of that is the dragon clock. And they're like, we can hide in there.
Yeah, it seems safe.
So the old fisherwoman grabs Melina and drags her into the dragon clock. And that's where Elphaba is born, is in the heart of this beast. She's born green. She doesn't cry. And the midwife gives her a finger to suck on, and she bites it off and drinks her blood.
Huh. Aggressive baby.
With very sharp shark teeth.
It's kind of funny.
And they're like, maybe we should kill it.
You know,
It's vicious, it's green.
I hate to say, I kind of feel him on that. Like, if a baby is putting out that kind of vibe, you know, I'm not going to be mad at someone suggesting that. I'm not going to go with it, but I get it.
And I also, reading that part, I kind of had that feeling of like, if you could kill baby Hitler, would you? And it really felt like kind of setting up that thought in their heads. And the old one who had actually given her the finger was like, no, she's a wee bit thing. It's okay. She didn't mean it.
Yeah,
But
this is clearly not an omen of the future.
she wouldn't put the baby on Melina's breast because she was worried the baby would bite her breast off.
Valid. Yeah, yeah. If a baby comes out with a full set of teeth, yeah, I'd be worried about it biting things off too.
Now, this is the only point where we are given to think that perhaps Elphaba is intersex. They can't tell if it's a boy or a girl. But then they are able to like clean off her genitals and see that she is a girl. But there is question in their mind at that time. And following the beginning of the prologue where it's like she's a hermaphrodite and she's evil and all those other things, it kind of makes you question. And then there's a couple other times where she doesn't let people see her naked and she doesn't let people touch her down there.
Yeah.
She'll have sex, but she won't let anyone touch her.
So it's just generating the rumor mill.
Yeah, and it's just kind of like this vague thing. He didn't want to come down one way or the other. She also doesn't feel like she is a woman or a man in herself. And that's kind of more addressed toward the end of the book.
Yeah.
But for the purpose of the story, she is a she. Everyone refers to her as a she. She refers to herself as a she.
Yeah.
And I don't really think that it's really commentary on gender or sex or any of that stuff. It's just, here's another odd thing about her that made
Sets
people
her
dislike
apart.
her. Yes.
Her pronouns are witch,
Wicked and witch.
wicked, and yeah, there you go.
So Frex and Melina are afraid of her and won't touch her as a newborn. They call for Nanny, which was Melina's nanny who raised her and cared for her. And Nanny comes and is really upset that they've never touched the baby. They don't care for her.
Yeah, that'd fuck up a baby. I get that.
So Nanny takes care of her, rocks her, feeds her, and just is basically her governess maid mommy. And she's like, how did you get a green child? Did you sleep with some elves? Because the elves are like the actual little, more like Irish Celtic trickster evil creatures in this world. And Melina was like, no, I wouldn't have sex with an elf, but I don't know who I had sex with. And Nanny's like, what? And she'd been taking pinlobble leaves to get high because Frex was always leaving her alone. And if some person just happened to stop by and be in the mood, she wouldn't say no.
Okay.
Because that's just how she was spending her afternoons, was sitting by the road waiting for anyone to come by and pay her any attention.
Therapy.
They don't have therapy in Oz.
They should. They should stop. They should stop making the roads yellow, or making bricks out of yellow, and get some people some therapy.
What's interesting is the yellow brick road hadn't been built at this time. It's built later by the wizard. But at this point, Melina's like, one time a stranger gave me a green elixir. Maybe it was him. Oh. And they're like, maybe we could do an exorcism. Maybe we can bleach her skin. Maybe we can pray for her. Maybe it's demons. And nothing fixes any of it because she's just a green baby.
Oh, they do all that stuff?
They think about it and they talk about it, but they don't actually try.
Okay.
They're just like, maybe.
Good for them not doing an exorcism on a baby. I respect that.
So Frex takes off and goes for months, all winter, off to some hamlet to pray in solitude because he got humiliated by the dragon clock in the village. His child is green, so no one's allowed to come around the house to see it because that'll be the end of their social life. Melina is home alone with Nanny and bored out of tears.
Well, so far it seems like the entire social aspect going on around this baby would make someone into a villain.
Yes, very much so.
So, yeah, it makes sense so far.
A man who is a quadling, which is his country. His country is like the land of the quadlings.
Heinous name. I hate that.
And his
I thought he was
name...
going to have like 4 legs.
No, his name is Turtleheart. And he has reddish skin and reddish hair.
Quadling named Turtleheart.
Yes. He's kind of simple, but he's a glass blower, and he is able to do magic with his glass blowing. He blows this kind of disc that they can see the future in. And he looks at it and says, your husband is coming down the road soon. And she says, when? He looks at it and says, later this evening. She says, okay, cool, and drags him off to bed.
I mean, she knows what she likes, I guess.
Yep.
So is that part of the psychology of the character that makes her evil, is that her mom was kind of a sexually...
deviant or whatever?
Yeah.
Not really, but it builds up. A lot of this is building up, and I tried to only include the things that I felt built up to the end point of this made her get called wicked.
Okay.
Frex comes home. He falls in love with Turtleheart too.
Oh, so they're a throuple.
They are a throuple.
Cool.
Not necessarily him and Turtleheart, but him and Melina with Turtleheart. They live as a throuple for a while.
Okay.
And Turtleheart becomes just the center of their home. And they both love him. And he loves Elphaba. And for this brief moment of time, they're like a little happy family.
Oh. Yeah, that's nice.
Because you're expecting Frex to freak out and have a tantrum and realize there's an affair.
Yeah.
But it actually is like they waylaid Turtleheart. He was on his way to the Emerald City. But he just moved in and just became part of the family, and that was like what they wanted.
Became a third parent.
Yeah. Who made Melina not feel alone when he was gone.
Well, that's nice.
And he could feel like he was leaving and not abandoning her.
Yeah. So is this just something nice, just to have something to contrast with when her life gets worse?
It's so that Melina gets pregnant and they don't know who the father is. And on the day the baby is born, Nessa Rose, Turtleheart is killed by a mob who watches the clock of the time dragon tell a story about a quadling. Their happy little throuple that lasted for a year is destroyed. The day Nessa Rose is born, they're both heartbroken. Frex doesn't know if he or Turtleheart is the father. That makes Nessa Rose a piece of Turtleheart. He doesn't want to know. He loves
that's
Nessa Rose
nice.
because she came from him, whether he knows it or not.
I mean, this would be so nice if they didn't already have a kid that they're actively ignoring.
Nessa Rose is born without arms.
Oh.
And because she's disabled, everyone has to care for her, hand feed her, hand wash her, walk her around. She can't stand upright without leaning against something.
Oh, so Elphaba's going to grow
Elphaba
up
becomes the
really jealous
caretaker, and everyone loves Nessa Rose and doesn't like her. And Nessa Rose grows up deeply religious, just like Frex, and needy and pitiful and helpless. And Elphaba cannot feel angry and jealous at her, but she does.
Yeah.
So this is why the story of Turtleheart matters, is because it builds up this little tiny period of time where things were good. And then they become very bad. Because after the thing with the time clock, Frex is like, that thing is evil, but these quadlings have no religion. We need to go to Quadling Land and preach and rescue them from their heathen ways. So he picks up Melina, Nessa Rose, Nanny, and Elphaba and drags them off to Quadling Country, which is a swamp, like parts of Louisiana.
Oh, is Quadling Country where the flying monkeys come from?
No.
Oh, okay.
It's just marshland and swampland. And so he drags them away to go be preachers because he loved Turtleheart so much and he felt like he didn't save his soul. Turtleheart died before he could convert him effectively.
Okay. Yeah.
So he decides, I must go and rescue Turtleheart's people from their heathen ways. So Elphaba's childhood is spent ignored, and then as a servant, caretaker, and then as the singer to her father's preaching in swamp country. She's allergic to water.
Yeah.
She has to wear thigh-high leather-skin boots and be constantly afraid and terrified of all the water around her.
Yeah, that would fuck you up. Yeah. I'm 100% on Wicked's side right now. Or Elphaba's.
So Like, for a brief period of time while they still live in Munchkinland, Nanny made her go and play with other little kids at school and get some little education. But as soon as they would tease her, she would, like, try to bite them or, stare daggers into their souls. And she just didn't have the socializing or friendship that she needed. And then going off and tromping around, Quadling country completely cut out any socializing or normal childhood she could have had.
Right.
We have a little tiny bit of sidebar into the political and religious shape of the world because it matters later. The Ozma regent is the father of the princess who will rule Oz. The Ozma who had been queen died of like an illness or old age. The princess is 2 years old. The regent is her father and is ruling in her stead. And it's a matrilineal
line of succession?
Yes. Turtleheart had fled Quadling country because the regent was going to build the Yellow Brick Road, and if he came through their swampland, he was going to build dams and dikes and try to fill it with earth, and they would realize that underneath all the mud in these swamps is rubies. The entire swampland is full of rubies.
Oh.
But no amount of dumping dirt and digging would ever stop it from being swampland.
Mm-hmm.
And along the way, they would just kill Quadlings and destroy their architecture because they had like little floating houses.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had like roads sort of between like the trees where they could use their like little boats.
Mm-hmm.
And they knew how to do agriculture, such as it was, in that. But if you come through and disrupt the water, you kill the animals, you disrupt their society.
So he was trying to
Go to the Emerald City and protest and say, please don't do this.
Yeah.
This will destroy my country. He got sidelined by Melina and Frax and never went on to plead his case.
Hey, sometimes you get a side quest, and that side quest is to be part of a throuple and raise a baby that's not yours.
Yeah.
I've been there.
They think that the reason Nessa Rose was born without arms is because Nanny went to the Emerald City and found an old medicine woman named Yackle and told her about the problem with the first child having green skin and said, can you give me medicine that will prevent the second child from having green skin? So she gave her herbal pills. And that child ended up without arms.
But no green skin.
But no green skin.
That's side effects are a bitch.
And at that time, Yackle predicted greatness for Melina's 2 daughters. And they're just kind of like, well, that was weird. Moving on.
We'll never think about this ever again.
Yes, we will never deal with this again. Not till the end of the book. 5 years after Nessa Rose's birth, Melina and Frax have a son named Shell, but Melina dies in childbirth.
Oh, sad.
So at 5, Nessa Rose is left without her mother. Elphaba is stuck helping Nanny with a newborn and a 5-year-old girl who cannot do anything for herself.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that, like, modern times, people who don't have arms can function in society.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen videos of people and even how, they have children and they can change their baby's diapers and all those things. In this society, they're wearing stuff that looks like Victorian clothing and their feet have to be in shoes. They cannot use their toes for anything. So perhaps in a different society, Nessa Rose could have developed skills on her own.
Right.
But in this society, that would
totally
be
dependent.
gross. She cannot do anything without help. And she has to sit like a young lady, in her tight dress and be hand-fed and hand-washed and everything has to be done for her. Because I kept thinking about that. Like, there are people who live without arms and we have things to help them, drive cars or do functional things. But in this society, like very specifically, she is prevented from adapting.
You ever wonder... I'm going to sidetrack for a second. There was a woman on YouTube who has no arms, and she kept getting a lot of questions as to how she wipes, which, in my opinion, I understand the instinct to ask that question.
That's also very
It's also
private.
a really weird question to ask somebody.
Yeah. Gracious me.
Yeah. That was for nowhere.
Okay. I thought you were going into an ad pivot.
Do you know who else will wipe you if your arms are totally indisposed or non-existent?
These wicked sponsors.
It's BetterHelp. They'll coach you through your emotions. Hello, bad book loving friends. Just updating our socials. We're on Blue Sky now at bugs-bibliorex.bsky.social. We have a Substack at Bugs and Books, and the profile name is Bugs at BiblioWrecks. And of course, our website, BiblioWrecks.com. Drop us a message and check out the content that Bugs works on. She's really good at the social stuff. And let's get back to that bad book.
And we're back with animals or animals.
And freshly wiped butts.
Well, I don't know about yours.
I mean, it's freshish.
We skip forward to college, and we start following Galinda's perspective.
And Galinda is the good witch of the North?
Yes, she was the good witch in The Wizard of Oz.
Okay.
And her name is Glinda in The Wizard of Oz. But at this point of her life, she is Galinda.
Galinda.
Yes.
I already don't like her.
She's going to college at Craig Hall in the town of Shiz. And she... What?
Shiz?
Yeah?
That's a weird name.
I was like, does that mean something to you?
I mean, not really. Like,
okay. All of the names in this are weird.
Yeah.
Frex.
Like, I think people
Elphaba?
sometimes, or I guess they more often used to say that something was the shiznit or something.
Oh.
Like they were saying something was cool.
Don't know about that. Okay. We're following her perspective. She's very full of herself. Her head is full of air. She is beautiful and fashionable and middle class.
Yeah, she doesn't have to be self-aware. She's pretty.
Exactly. She is on the train with Dr. Dillamond, who is a goat, not a goat. The capitalization at the beginning means that he is a sentient animal who maybe has a soul, but he is supposed to be an equal member of society.
Okay, so he's not a goat. He's a goat.
Right.
Gotcha.
Just like the Cowardly Lion is a lion, not a lion. Which in the audiobook helped me a little bit, but when I was not paying attention, I'd be like, wait, what? Because you have to emphasize the first letter. Animal rights under the wizard are shrinking. Galinda doesn't care because her head is full of air. But Dr. Dillamond is trying to explain to her how his poor mother cannot afford to even ride on a train anymore and she has to ride penned up with animals. When he was growing up, he was able to take his exams orally, but now student goats are discriminated against because they can't hold a pencil. They changed the rules to prevent animals from having rights.
Okay, so it's a systemic oppression of sentient animals.
Yes.
Do these animals go to the bathroom, or do they just poop outside like normal goats?
No, I think they actually use facilities. They have jobs. They act as
how would a goat sit on a toilet?
Humans. Well, they probably have differently shaped toilets. They wear clothing.
Sounds like a hassle. I understand why we're oppressing these
bastard.
There's so much trouble. Every animal gets their own specific toilet. Of course, I guess they could all use litter boxes, and that would cover a lot of it.
They probably do. I mean, they have to have specially shaped clothing and other things too.
Oh, they wear clothes?
Yeah.
Oh,
they wear clothing and they go through society, and if there's accommodations, they can do the same jobs as everyone else.
Right, okay.
But by removing those accommodations, oral lectures, or requiring holding a pencil, or requiring sitting upright instead of being on 4 feet, they're able to say, well, you don't...
It's kind of a metaphor for an ableist society.
Yes. And most of this book is about animal rights. And it's also kind of a allegory for civil rights for like black people or, brown people. And it has to do with oppression by the system and how other people just go along with it.
Okay.
He cannot say Galinda, so he says Glinda, and that's where her name comes from later.
Okay.
The atmosphere in the city is full of animals. They all have jobs. There's some directing traffic. There's others working in shops. Oh, that's what he looks like. Dr. Dillamond.
That's a goat with glasses.
And a shirt.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
See?
It's a very spiffy looking goat.
He is a very spiffy. I love him. Galinda had gotten to shiz with, like, her beauty and a scholarship because she's bright enough to write, like, a philosophy exam. But she didn't realize she would actually have to study, have a roomie, or be an actual student.
Yeah.
But she is full of opinions, and having an opinion is important. She thinks there was something vulgar about traveling in jewels. As she realized this truth, she codified it into a saying. At the earliest perfect opportunity, she would bring it out as proof of her having opinions and having traveled. The overdressed traveler betrays more interest in being seen than in seeing, she murmured, trying it out, while the true traveler knows that the novel world about her serves as the most appropriate accessory.
So she's just trying to sound like a pseudo-intellectual?
Yes, that's all she cares about. She cares about being seen as important. She doesn't care about being important. She cares about being seen as beautiful.
So she's like philosophizing about someone else in that situation, and she's just talking about herself?
She sees other people wearing fancy jewelry coming off of the train to get to shiz.
Yeah. So
And
calling the kettle
herself
black.
was wearing a nice silver necklace, not diamonds and rubies.
Okay, so she thinks she's better than them because she's trying to dress down?
She was wearing the nice things she had. She was having a reason to prop herself up and make herself seem better.
Okay.
And put them down because they were wearing nicer things than she was. But she
Gotcha.
wants to be them.
Okay.
She tries to climb the social ladder. Her Amma Clutch is like her governess. Amma Clutch got stepped on a nail and got waylaid and couldn't be there with Galinda to get off the train. Because she doesn't have someone there to speak up for her, she gets stuck rooming with Elphaba, who no one else wants to room with.
Right, because of the teeth.
No, she has normal teeth now.
Oh.
Her baby teeth fell out, and she gained normal human teeth.
Oh, so
As a
she just
child.
had baby shark teeth?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's the worst time to have shark teeth.
I know, when you shouldn't be chewing up things.
Yeah.
She goes and tries to speak to Madame Morrible, who's the head mistress of the school, and say, I can't be roomed with Elphaba. I just can't. She's like, well, your other option is to be in the dormitory with 15 other girls. No, she cannot be in a dormitory with common girls. And she's like, well, why not? And so Galinda comes up with a lie and says that because if she was in a dormitory, her Amma Clutch would have to help take care of all the other girls and be a chaperone.
Okay.
Because that's their purpose, is to go get the tea, be a chaperone, be there to take care of them, make sure they eat their meals, make sure they go and study, and not run off and have sex with boys. And she thinks up a lie and says, well, I didn't want to say anything, but Amma Clutch goes weird sometimes and starts talking to inanimate objects. And Madame Morrible's like, well, how strange. And she said, I didn't want to say anything about it, but if she had to take care of 15 children, the stress would be too much. And so Madame Morrible says, fine, you can room with Elphaba. And that's where she gets stuck.
Talking to inanimate objects cannot be like the weirdest thing going on in Oz.
But it's like an ailment that she just makes up for Amma Clutch to have.
Right.
And that was the most clever thing she could think of at that moment.
Yeah, I mean, I get what she's doing. That sounds like the least weird thing I've ever heard about Oz.
Yeah. Madame Morrible holds a poetry reading and everyone goes. Because this is like part of what you do in a fancy college.
Being social and whatnot.
Yes, and I have to read you the poem. Alas for impropriety, the guillotine of piety, to remedy society. Indulge not to satiety. In mirth and shameless gaiety, choose sobering sobriety. Behave as if the deity approaches in its mystery, and greet it with sonority. Let your especial history be built upon sorority, whose virtues do exemplify, and social good thus multiply. Animals should be seen and not heard.
Oof. Ended real strong there.
I'm sure you can imagine Dr. Delamont is...
He'd be a little upset. I think he'd be bleeding about this.
Yes.
Quite a bit.
He was heard to say, well, that's not poetry, that's propaganda, and it's not even good propaganda at that. And Elphaba tries to talk to Galinda and be like, wasn't...
That shit you said was real fucked up.
Well, she's trying to talk to Galinda, not Morrible. Madame Morrible was the one who read that.
Oh, okay.
But Galinda is like, don't talk to me, don't talk to me, don't talk to me, you're green and ugly, oh my god. And is like trying to scoot away. And Elphaba doesn't have any friends. The only person she has talked to is
her
Galinda,
roommate, yeah.
her roommate. And Elphaba says, I mean that last line, you couldn't tell by that fancy accent whether it was meant to be animals or animals. So within it, we don't know because she can play it off as, well, I didn't mean Dr. Dillamond.
Yeah, it's got its own little dog whistle. That's nice.
So we're building up. This is where Elphaba witnesses within academia. We are trying to stop them from speaking, but we're using poetry and propaganda to do it. They meet Bach, who is a Munchkinlander boy who is short. And he remembers Elphaba because he had been at that little school that Nanny insisted that Elphaba go to sometimes. He immediately falls in love with Galinda and her beautiful golden hair and curls. And
as the Munchkins are wont to do. If I remember correctly in the movie, they all seem pretty in awe of her, I guess.
yeah. But she won't give him the time of day because she's
middle
class.
Women
and
hate short guys.
It's because he's a commoner.
Yeah, okay, that too.
Yeah.
Women hate short, poor guys.
She is determined to marry like a baron, or a duke, not...
Wants to marry up.
She wants to marry up. Dr. Dillamond talks about how laws have been passed that don't allow animals to travel, use public lodgings, or move into public jobs. He currently has a job at the school, but laws have been passed that animals coming of age cannot get jobs.
Yeah.
The ones that are there are grandfathered in. Nobody new can take these positions. And Galinda's like, well, do you have kids? And he's like, no, but I might. I might have nieces and nephews. I can care about this, whether or not I have children who are affected by this. And she's like, oh, well, I mean, if you don't have, what do you care? Like, she doesn't care. She just does not see it as important at all.
Yeah, fucking airhead.
Yes. But Elphaba takes it inside of her and is like,
Yeah,
this is wrong.
Yeah, because she knows what it's like to be treated like shit.
Yes. She also saw the devastation in Quadling country when they went through and tried to build the Yellow Brick Road. She saw them put the Quadlings in internment camps and let them starve to death.
Oh, I didn't know this story included internment camps. That's something.
So they had been considered less than human because they lived in this swamp and they looked weird and they were poor and didn't talk normally. The wizard went through and just devastated them. And they finally left and went back to Munchkinland after they didn't have any more Quadlings to preach to because they'd all been murdered.
Sad.
Yes.
Fucking bummer.
Yes. So she has seen what the logical result of this leads to. And she doesn't want it to happen to animals.
Yeah.
Galinda has always lived with a silver spoon in her mouth and just doesn't care.
Yeah. She doesn't know where this kind of thing leads to.
Elphaba tries in class to discuss the poem with Madame Morrible, who decides to hide behind irony.
Oh yeah, it's satire.
It's ironic. You wouldn't get it. One could consider it in an ironic mode if one chose, said Madame Morrible.
It was just a prank, bro.
How do you choose? Said Elphaba. How impertinent, said Madame Morrible. And she says, I'm just trying to learn. And Madame Morrible replies, you must learn to put yourself in the shoes of someone wiser than you are and look from that angle. To be stuck in ignorance, to be circumscribed by the walls of one's own modest acumen. Well, it is very sad in one so young and bright. She spit out the last word, and it seemed to Galinda, somehow, a low comment on Elphaba's skin.
Yeah, bright green.
But I was trying to put myself in the shoes of Dr. Dillamond, said Elphaba. In the case of poetic interpretation, I venture to suggest it may indeed be true. Animals should not be heard, snapped Madame Morrible. Do you mean that ironically? Said Elphaba, but she sat down and didn't look up. So she tries to do the discourse. This is supposed to be an exercise in discourse on the issues.
Yeah.
And instead, Madame Morrible goes with, it was a joke. You don't even know you're too dumb.
Yeah, shutting it down instead of talking about it.
Because she's not willing to discuss it. She wants to have this horrible opinion and not ever deal with the consequences of people being upset with her.
Yeah. Boy, that sounds familiar.
Reading this was a little terrifying.
Yeah.
You'll see.
I'm picking up on some themes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Feeling real familiar.
They get so much worse. Bach tries to spy on Galinda. Elphaba catches him, and he becomes friends with Elphaba because if he's close to her, he'll get to see Galinda sometimes. Galinda decides to help Dr. Dillamond because he has decided to study the biology of humans and animals using, I think they call it contrasting lenses, like a microscope, to see if the tissue of animals and humans is the same. He wants to prove that animals and humans were created at the same time, have a soul, and therefore deserve equal rights.
Good luck, I guess.
So he was working really hard on it because there's some beliefs that animals were created through a magic spell that the Cumbric Witch used. And she's like a creature from mythology that pagans believe in, but not Unionists. And then other people think that animals should have rights because they're sentient. But nobody has a good, solid reason why. And he's trying to say, this proves we're the same. This proves you have to respect us.
He's trying to find a point in easily seen reality that can anchor him to having rights.
Yes. And this really reflects the, issue of people believing black people were a different race.
Yeah,
or
like
non-human.
You've got
or
phrenology
other.
and stuff like that used to be propagated back in the day just to have so they could have a reason to be like, oh, they're physically so much different than us. They're really not even the same.
Whereas without melanin, it's all just humans. It's the same DNA. It's the same blood types. It's, you'll have genetic variation among groups, but you do not have a core difference from human to human.
Right.
That's what he is trying to prove. So their little group of people are like collecting books and trying to help him and trying to, study with him, but it's very secret and hush hush because he's worried someone will try to stop him. Obviously.
Yeah. Usually when people are wanting to take advantage of a certain people, they want to keep doing that and don't like it when people try to stop them using logic and facts and reason.
Using their own rules to prove. Yeah. One night, Alma Clutch was closing the window to the girl's room and she sees something weird. And so she goes downstairs. But Galinda and Elphaba go to sleep. In the morning, they find out that Alma Clutch is in the infirmary and Dr. Dillamond had been murdered. Galinda goes and tries to talk to her, and lo and behold, she is talking to a spoon.
What? Now, hold on. What? Wait, who is she going to talk to again?
Alma Clutch is Galinda's nanny, like her nursemaid.
Right, and she's
and she
injured.
Has not been injured, but she now has the actual weird illness that Galinda had lied about her having.
Oh, okay.
And Galinda had only ever used that lie to Madame Morrible.
Okay, so that implies that it was Madame Morrible that had something to do with this and put a spell on the aunt and likely killed the goat professor.
Yes. What had happened was his throat had been cut open, and they said he had cracked a looking glass and fell on it.
What? That's crazy.
So they're like, it wasn't a murder, it was an accidental death.
He fell on the knife.
He fell on it. He cracked this piece of glass and fell on it and ripped himself from ear to ear.
Yeah, I've heard crazier theories.
So Galinda is stuck feeling like, well, did my lie come true? Or did Madame Morrible do this? Her response of this tragic event is to change her name to Glinda because that is how Dr. Dillamond pronounced her name. It's an empty, worthless thing to do, but it made her feel like, I am so brave and I am responding to this outrage.
It made her feel like she was honoring
his
the
memory.
Dead. Yeah.
Yes. Whereas Elphaba actually goes into his office and steals all of the papers about his work so that she can try to take it aside and hide it and continue his research somehow.
Yeah.
Now, you haven't asked, But
I'm just trying to absorb everything.
no, Elphaba is not learning magic. Elphaba does not have magic, and Elphaba does not do magic.
Yeah, I don't remember her really ever doing magic in The Wizard of Oz. Like, she looks at a crystal ball and she orders the flying monkeys around, but
Right.
she never does anything magic in the movie, right?
But when I was a kid, I thought she must be terribly powerful. She's the Wicked Witch of the West.
Yeah.
And she flies on a broom, right? But yeah, in this schooling, Glinda decides to go and become a sorceress and actually learn magic. Because there is magic in this world. People do magic all the time.
Okay.
Elphaba was learning, I think they call it natural science or life sciences or something like that. It's like biology and natural history. And so they kind of have like a split in direction because Glinda is like, I can become a sorceress and this will improve my chances of a good husband and I can be special and do cool things. But she also has it in her head that maybe it was herself who created McClutch's disorder.
Oh, so she thinks that she is already magical.
And when she brings it up to Morrible that it had been a lie, Morrible is like, well, maybe you have stronger sorceress tendencies than you think.
It's like, yeah, sure, you're a fucking narcissist. You'll believe this stupid shit.
She plays her.
Yeah.
And she does play them a lot. And this is where Elphaba explains her childhood. Like, I've talked about it all along, but this is where she actually explains to Glinda how the wizard put the quadlings into camps and starved them to death, and she has seen the end result of what is happening. And she believes Dr. Dillamond's death is the direction, like, this is proof that that's where this is going. Animals who have been members of society, who have had equal jobs, who have had equal rights, are now going to end up murdered, and no one will name it a murder.
And no one of any authority will care because they're all trying to push them out.
Yeah. And if you think about it, in the span of one lifetime, Dr. Dillamond, he went from having equal rights to education and to jobs to being murdered and no one cared. He lost all of those rights over his lifetime through shifting tiny steps all along the way. They try to figure out who will be the chaperone for Glinda and Elphaba, and so they call for Nanny to come up. And she brings Nessa Rose because she has to care for Nessa Rose, and Nessa Rose would have been coming in the following year anyway, because she's just a couple years younger than Elphaba.
Okay.
Nessa Rose has no arms, and this is where we find out all of that. Glinda finds her very creepy and doesn't want to be around her.
Rude?
Yeah.
That's super not nice at all.
She is deeply religious,
Yeah.
whereas Elphaba is an atheist.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Bach and Elphaba discuss Dr. Dillamond's research, and she has radicalized him against the wizard. He is asking her about the papers and like all of the study material that Dillamond had. And she's like, do you take me for a fool? Of course I already got all those papers. And he's like, well, show them to me. I want to help. And she's like, you didn't take his classes because you were in this other
I
school.
don't fucking trust you.
No, it's that she looks down on him
Oh, okay.
in an intellectual way and also doesn't want him to get involved because he might get hurt. It was never your particular interest, she said. Besides, until there's something to prove, what's the point? I don't think Dr. Dillamond was there yet. I am a Munchkinlander, he answers proudly. Look, Elfie, you're more or less convinced me what the wizard is up to. The confining of animals back onto farms to give the dissatisfied Munchkinlander farmers the impression he's doing something for them, and also to provide forced labor for the sinking of useless new wells. It's vile, but this affects Wend Hardings and the towns that sent me here. So the farmers were disillusioned with the wizard because they'd had a drought for a decade and he had magic, but he didn't come and fix it. He sends animals to be slave labor on their farms to make them happy with him. So he fixes two problems with one solution. He gets these animals out of the way and he gives slaves to the farmers who were uprising against him.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how many rights are being taken away as long as the economy is fixed.
Yes. And we can make farmers feel like they are above someone. And that will make them feel better because that improves their social standing.
Yeah, great.
Nothing current in this at all.
Not at all.
God, this was making me so depressed last night when I was writing all this down. A new kid shows up to school. His name is Fiyero. He is a prince of the Vincus.
I'm just going to imagine that he is Guy Fieri, and I will, in my head, think of him as Guy Fiero.
That's wrong because he has brown skin and blue diamond tattoos on his face.
Doesn't matter, he's got frosted tips and sunglasses, so... In my head, that's what he looks like.
Well, that is wrong. You're going to have to fix that because he is from a tribe that hunts in grassland. And he is a prince who is already married to a future spouse. He was married off at the age of 7.
Oh.
And will return home as the chieftain of a tribe and has to lead it and try to...
The tribe of Flavortown?
No.
Damn it.
No, take this seriously.
All right, I'm up.
Okay, so Fiyero is really handsome, really shy. Elphaba said, or some of Galinda's friends say his skin is the color of shit, which makes Elphaba furious.
Yeah,
and they're like, "Oh,
understandably.
well, you would care because your skin is a gross color too." So basically,
That's not nice,
the classism and racism goes toward other humans as well.
yeah.
Because they're not white and local and rich. They get made fun of and tormented.
Yeah. Yeah, don't even need an allegory for that one.
No.
That one's just racist.
Yeah. In class one day, they have a new professor who had replaced Dr. Dillamond, and he brings in a lion cub and asks the students if it is an animal or an animal. Elphaba replies that the lion cub's mother would know, and Dr. Nicky Dick says its mother died in an explosion, and such things as the mother lion's opinion didn't matter anyway. He proposes that without speech, it is impossible to tell, and actually, it just doesn't matter, because this lion cub is non-sentient since it can't speak yet.
So the line for sentience is speech.
That's where he's drawing the line.
Yeah, that's not a good indicator at all, because there are people that are mute, and that doesn't mean they're not sentient. That's just
And
piss
we
poor
can
reasoning.
also see how we took Dr. Dillamond, who is very liberal in his views, and we actually replace him with someone who is radical in
A propagandist.
a propagandist,
Yeah.
who is much more in line with with Madame Morable's views on animals. So they keep arguing with him about whether or not the lion is a lion, and he just says, well, you can't prove it. You can't prove it. You can't prove it. Finally, he says, now, do you think that if we could cauterize that part of the brain that develops language, we could eliminate the notion of pain and thus its existence? Early tests on this little Tom lion show interesting results. He had picked up a small hammer with a rubber head and a syringe. The beast drew itself up and hissed, and then backed up and fell on the floor, and streaked toward the door, which had closed and locked from this side which was locked. But it wasn't only Elphaba who was on her feet yelling. Half a dozen students were shouting at the doctor. Pain? Eliminate pain? Look at the thing, it's terrified. It already gets pain. Don't do that. Are you crazy? Because he's just ready to experiment on it right in front of them.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense either. Like,
If he could remove its ability to speak,
Right.
they won't have proof that
then it would
is in
just be
pain.
a lowercase animal, which, yeah, if you lobotomize something, it's not going to be quite as intellectually acute as its not fucked up counterpart.
So, in a space of weeks, we had a goat lecturing at this lectern to an animal being potentially
Lobotomized
in front of the
body, yeah.
students. And the doctor paused, visibly tightening his grip on the mallet. I will not preside over such shocking refusal to learn, he said, affronted. You are leaping to harebrained conclusions based on sentiment and no observation. Bring the beast back.
Facts don't care about your feelings.
Yes. And we can look at them as things. We no longer treat them as people. So this, of course, makes Elphaba more radicalized.
Yeah,
She
as it
sees-
should. Yeah.
Yes, yes. She cares about this deeply. Everyone
yeah.
else is mildly uncomfortable and doesn't really do anything about it.
Yeah.
We see the 3 levels of response. We see blithe ignorance and refusal to pay
Lukewarm.
attention. We see discomfort, and then we see reaction. Oh, the ruby slippers show up
In the school?
to her sister. So you remember in The Wizard of Oz, the shoes were on the Wicked Witch of the East's feet, and that was the Wicked Witches of the West's sister.
Oh, okay.
Nessa Rose gets a box in the mail, and it's from Frex. And he had bought shoes from a old tinker woman, and he had learned glass blowing from Turtleheart. He made glass blown beads and sewed them onto these slippers for Nessa Rose.
Aw.
And they're beautiful. Everyone is just shocked and jealous.
I don't know why, but retroactively making the witch that got crushed by the house at the beginning of The Wizard of Oz just have no arms, and no one having mentioned that in the movie at all. I don't know why, but that's funny to me.
Yeah. I didn't read the book, The Wizard of Oz. Want to hear a fun little story about that?
Sure.
My mom read it and was going to read it to us and watch the movie as part of our homeschooling education. Then she realized it had magic in it.
God damn it.
And so
That's such a dumb reason.
that was about the time all magic movies got banned from the house.
Had she not watched The Wizard of Oz?
She must have.
It's got the name Wizard in it.
I know.
What? How do you read that title and at any point are surprised when there's motherfucking magic?
And like one time we sat down and were watching Bed Knobs and Broomsticks, and then when they started flying around on a broom, she turned it off and got mad.
That's so fucking stupid.
Because I think when she'd been younger, she watched these and they were normal.
Yeah.
And then as she became more radicalized against modern culture, she suddenly realized, oh, we can't enjoy any of these things I watched as a kid.
That's so fucking dumb.
So I just have this intense memory of loving The Wizard of Oz as a very small child.
And not being able to
And
watch
then
it.
suddenly she read the book and we could no longer watch it anymore. Yeah.
That's so weird.
Yeah. So
That's bizarre.
I'm coming at this with my own kind of perspective on Frex being such a religious and strict father.
Right.
And the reactions of his children, one to becoming like a saint and the other to becoming an atheist. And I'm just finding it really interesting this read through.
This 100% makes sense as to why you picked this for a book you like. This makes
Yes.
100% sense for Bugs lore.
Yeah, because when I read it originally, maybe in 2010, I was kind of questioning my faith and I was like in college, and then I could not take that leap. I could not leave it. And this book made me very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I could not handle the cognitive dissonance that this book brought to me.
Yeah.
Now it's like, wow, this is so powerful and amazing, you know? And I knew it was good then. I just couldn't handle the messages, you know?
Yeah, the conclusions that you didn't want to get to.
Yes. Yeah. Like I even ignored most of my philosophy class because I could not handle the questioning. It was too painful. So they get the box with the shoes. Elphaba drove her fingers through the curlicues of shavings. There was nothing else in the box, nothing for her. Aren't they gorgeous? Nessa Rose exclaimed. Elfie, fix them on my feet, would you please? Oh, how they sparkle. Elphaba went on her knees before her sister. Nessa Rose sat as regal as any Ozma, spine erect and face glowing. Elphaba lifted her sister's feet and slipped off the common house slippers and replaced them with the dazzling shoes. How thoughtful he is, said Nessa Rose. Good thing you can stand on your own 2 feet, you, muttered Nanny to Elphaba and put her hand patronizingly on Elphaba's shoulder blade. But Elphaba shrugged it away. They're just gorgeous, said Elphaba thickly. Nessa Rose, they're made for you. They fit like a dream. Oh, Elfie, don't be cross, Nessa Rose said, looking down at her feet. Don't ruin my small happiness with resentment, will you? He knows you don't need this kind of thing. Of course not, said Elphaba. Of course I don't.
Jeez. That's so fucking sad.
Even as adults.
Just getting bullied by the
lack.
disabled person who is just sucking up all the sympathy in the room at all times.
And just that image of her on her knees in front of her sister, and there's nothing, not even a note, not even a letter.
Not a fuck you, hi, how are you, nothing.
Yeah, that he just ignored her existence and spent hours blowing glass beads and sewing them onto these shoes because Nessa Rose was his pet and his favorite, and she was deeply religious just like him.
Yep, I'd raise an army of monkeys too.
Yeah, like it's just so sad. So many chunks of this book are just heart-wrenching, and that's one thing I love about this book, that it's like
Not afraid to pull the punches.
it does. Yes, it does not pull any punches. It is really, because he takes more of a psychological view of how you create a monster. You deprive them of mother's love. You deprive them of touch as a baby. You make them bullied by everyone around them. You isolate them.
You treat them monstrously.
And they become a monster. And so, yeah, he works really well at making you very sympathetic
That's really good. I feel
for
bad.
the witch. We have a little bit of political intrigue. Grammatic is the name of a mechanical servant that is Madame Morable's servant. And Grammatic is the thing that Alma Clutch saw standing over Dr. Dillamond. And it was covered in blood. But it's the servant of Madame Morable. Everyone is creeped out by it. And they're like, it's always listening to us. But it doesn't talk or do anything except serve tea and wander around and do what she tells it to do. So one morning it collects the them and takes them to the infirmary because Clutch is dying. Like, she's actually, like, ill and dying with an illness. Nanny and Nessa manage to get Morrible out of the room, and Glinda and Elphaba try to talk to Clutch and ask her, like, what actually happened. Glinda does a little bit of magic, and it helps clear her mind, so she's able to talk to them. Because all along, she would just churn and talk to a napkin or a spoon and just mutter nonsense to it. So for a few minutes, they're able to get her mind clear, and Elphaba says, "Who killed Dr. Dillamond?" And she's like, "I'm trying to tell you, it was Grommatic." And so in that moment before she dies, she tells them she saw Grommatic standing over Dr. Dillamond with a knife.
I wonder if she ever spoke to Grommatic, because he's like an inanimate object sort of, right? Like he's sort of a robot.
He's a TikTok creature, and they don't really talk. It's not really dealt with in this book, whether they're created or magic or where they come from. People will kind of talk about it and be like, I always wondered what made them move. And at one point, Nanny's like, I always imagined it as a little dwarf inside pulling levers and making it walk around. And somebody else was like, I think it was magic that was done to them to make them animate. Okay. But they're not considered sentient. Yeah. Because, I mean, this is already a 400-page book. I think if we did more world building.
Yeah, let's not get on the ancillary stuff too much. So
they have the funeral, and after the funeral, Morrible gets Nessa Rose, Glinda, and Elphaba in a room by themselves. She tells them she's putting a binding spell on them, and she tells them that they are going to be adepts, which is like someone who's good at stuff, and she puts them where she wants them to be. So it's like political manipulation, and she sees them as having potential. We haven't really talked about Elphaba and Nessa's lineage because up till this point it hasn't mattered. Melina was the granddaughter of the eminent Throp, who was the ruler of Munchkinland. And it was also a matrilineal line of succession. But if there were no daughters, the oldest son would take over that job. And then once he passed, it would go to the next female descendant. Melina did not want daughters because she hated being in the palace, being groomed for rule. She hated all of it. And because it was her father or grandfather who was ruling, she didn't have to rule. And she actually rebelled and ran away and married Frax, which was marrying down, when she should have married someone who was of high status and done courtly work.
Right.
And she didn't want daughters because they would be stuck in the palace ruling. So she chose poverty and being common to avoid all of that responsibility and avoid all the headache, but she had 2 daughters anyway. When Elphaba gets to adulthood and the eminent Throp dies, Elphaba becomes the queen of Munchkinland, essentially. And it is its own place. It is its own little country.
Yeah.
Morrible knows all this, and she wants Elphaba to go and be her adept in Munchkinland and help rule it to be under the Wizard of Oz's rule. She wants Nessa Rose to go back to Quadling Country and help get them under control because the few that are left are rebellious and run around and hide. She wants Nessa Rose to be
snuff out the remaining rebellion.
Yeah, be like a civilizing force there. And she wants Glinda she wants her to be an adept in Gillikin, which is where Glinda is from. She says, Miss Glinda, with your middle-range social position and your transparent ambitions, you can slime your way into ballrooms of Margreaves and still be home in the pigsties. Oh, don't squirm so. Your good blood is only on one side, and it's not a terribly refined strain anyway. The adept of Gillikin, Miss Glinda? Does it appeal? So she's trying to play them and make them political pawns, and also put them under spell so they can't speak about it. They can't go tell anyone.
Yeah, the last thing you want when you have lieutenants, the last thing you want is for them to be able to uprise and take you out and take your place.
Yeah. And this is when Elphaba starts seeing conspiracies everywhere. Because she knows what this is.
Yeah.
This is obviously someone creating a conspiracy. And this is when she starts to feel like, I have no control over my life. Someone else is always doing things to manipulate where I am. So she does the most random thing she can think of, and she gets Glinda to pack a bag and go with her to the Emerald City. They're going to go speak to the wizard and demand justice for Dr. Dillamond. Glinda's like, I have no part in this. I'm not here to make trouble. I'm not the one making a fuss.
Yeah, I don't want to make waves.
I don't want to make waves. And the wizard is just an evil politician. Mm-hmm. His character is very plainly evil for power's sake. Mm-hmm. I do feel like his character is designed in a way where he doesn't see any rules or laws applying to him. Mm-hmm. His reasoning, though, is he came from another world, and he ended up in this one, and their rules and sensibilities don't matter to him because he's not from there.
Oh, okay, so this just doesn't apply to him because it's not his reality, and he doesn't have to care.
Yeah. So they try to tell him Dr. Dillamond was murdered, and he was like, oh, I don't care about that. And Elphaba's like, well, a whole population of animals are being systematically deprived of rights. And he was like, oh, I don't care about that either. And he makes fun of her and says, you're just emotional and weird. Get out of here. They do try to tell him that Madame Morrible was like creating a conspiracy of adepts and controls. And he's like, oh, well, how do you know I didn't bring you here? Which plays more into Elphaba's paranoia. Yeah. She has the papers that were going to prove some of Dillamond's theories, and she was going to show them to him to get his attention and his help. And
now she probably doesn't think it's such a good idea because she's afraid he'll take them and discard them.
Well, she says, I shall take you to be right thinking, for if I did not, I should be obliged to join an army against you. She's trying to hold him to some moral standard because he keeps slipping and sliding away and saying, I don't care about that. I don't care about this. I don't care about that. Oh, hell, Elfie, said Glinda. She doesn't speak for both of us. I'm an independent person here. And so he's like, I don't listen to anyone who uses the word immoral. And she says, well, if there's no morality, then nothing would keep me from assassinating you. Did I not know what wrong was? I don't believe in assassination. I don't even know what it means, Glinda called.
So I'm not here. I'm not even a fly on the wall.
So she drags along Glinda because she thinks that she will
provide some backup.
Be some moral support. And Glinda's like, what? I don't know anything about this. Leave me out of this. So they go back to the coach to go back to Shiz. Elphaba bundles up Glinda, puts her on the coach, and says, go back to Shiz and have a good life, and walks away. Glinda returns to Grage Hall and gets her degree in sorcery. And Nessa Rose and Nanny get along as best as they can without Elphaba to wait on her hand and foot.
Well, on foot anyway.
On foot. Replacing her hands. Speaking of giving me a hand, what about these sponsors?
Ads. Hello, bad book loving friends. Just updating our socials. We're on Blue Sky now at bugs-bibliorex.bsky.social. We have a Substack at Bugs and Books, and the profile name is Bugs at BiblioWrecks. And of course, our website, BiblioWrecks.com. Drop us a message and check out the content that Bugs works on. She's really good at the social stuff. And let's get back to that bad book.
And we're back after being halfway through and Bam Bam looking at me with despair. Granted, this is a very long book with a lot of world building.
Very long.
The next 40 pages are Elphaba in the city being a terrorist.
Okay.
She is going around with little underground groups and doing mild terrorism and blowing things up. And Fiyero manages to catch her in a church and sees her green skin and is like, hey, I know you, because it's very hard to hide when you have green skin.
Right, yeah.
And he follows her home and is like, hey, be my friend. Hey, be my friend. Hey, be my friend.
Hey, try this taco place I found.
And she finally is like, okay, fine. And she sort of talks to him, sort of lets him in a little, and they start an affair. And he thinks very guiltily of his wife and 3 children at home. So he goes and buys them more presents and sends them home and then goes and fucks Elphaba again.
Yeah. Does it get him those little hats with the fiery hair, little.
Oh
fake
my
mustache.
God. Good morning.
Every time you bring him up, I'm going to make a Guy Fieri joke.
You're insane. Well, most of the rest of the book is about him.
Okay.
In a way. So, just.
I've got plenty in stock.
So he doesn't interfere in her political goals.
Mm-hmm.
And she doesn't tell him what to do.
Yeah.
They go their own way, do their own thing. He's a politician because he's a prince of the Vinkus.
Mm-hmm. They're each other's little section of emotional connection.
Yeah. This is their little... They were both made fun of and othered at school.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing her, he feels sympathy and warmth. She warms up and lets him in. And then at Lillenemus, it's so hard to say, their Christmas festival, she keeps begging him to please be safe. Please be home. Stay home. Take a bath. Read a book. Stay home.
Please don't be here when I do this terroristy
please don't
shit.
Go out in public when at Christmas. Please, please, please. And so, of course, he follows her because he's like, what kind of stuff are you doing? Mm. And he follows her to a theater, and she walks across, like, to the side of the road, and Madame Morrible is going up the steps to the theater. And he can see that Elphaba is there to kill her in a spectacular public way. And in between Morrible and Elphaba walks a group of children. And she chooses not to go through with it because she considers killing innocents wrong. So she turns away and runs off, having failed her mission. Mm-hmm. And he thinks she's going to go back to the apartment and I should be there to comfort her. He goes back to the apartment and the secret police come in and kill him.
Oh, that's rough.
So she goes back home to a room full of blood and no body. And then she goes back to the monastery where he had found her and becomes a nun.
Maybe it was just special sauce.
So that is the break. That is what breaks her. Mm-hmm. We go from... shitty childhood. Loads of people have shitty childhoods. Horrible experience at college. Mm-hmm. Loads of people have horrible experience with college.
Yeah. Cackling fiend.
Yeah. And she spends 7 years in this monastery. They call it a mont. The first year, she's senseless and unconscious and just dreaming because her psyche has been broken. Mm-hmm. The one person in her life
that ever showed her any warmth.
Any warmth, any attention, any affection, and she loved him back, is dead because of her.
Oof. That's all I got is oof.
Yeah. So she spends a year in bed, and then she spends the next 6 years serving as Sister Elphaba under a vow of silence, because it's a nunnery. Mm-hmm. After 7 years being there, she says, I want to leave. She has put her psyche back together enough. The mother says, you may leave, but you must take this boy with you. And this boy's name is Lear, and he is 7 years old.
Okay.
They get on a wagon train, and they go to Vinkus.
So is this kid going to be, I don't know, some kind of character in The Wizard of Oz later or something?
The next book in this series is Son of the Witch, and that's Lear.
Okay.
However, in this book, we don't know who this child is.
Yeah.
For quite a long time.
Okay.
I'll skip to the punch and say, Elphaba doesn't know if Lear is her son. She spent the first year senseless. She doesn't remember giving birth.
Okay.
And then she cared for lots of orphan children in the monastery and didn't care for any of them. Mm-hmm. It was only the mother giving her this boy and saying, you can leave, but take this with you. Mm. And she has no feeling toward him. He's not green. He's just a random boy. But now he is stuck on a wagon train heading west.
With this insane green woman.
Mm-hmm. So he goes and fetches her food, he cleans her shoes, he brings her tea, he waits on her, and has nothing to do. He is very, very lonely.
So is she, treating him, is she telling him to do these things, or is he just so bored that he's doing them?
I think that living in the monastery, he learned service.
Okay.
And he's only doing what he was doing already there, but for groups of people. He was probably a child servant in the monastery.
Okay, so basically he's being treated...
he was probably told by the mother, take care of Elphaba.
Okay.
He was not told, this is your mother. He was told, take care of her.
Right. Okay.
So, they travel west with the wagon train. Elfie ignores him completely. He falls in love with the pet dog because there's something that looks at him with
affection.
Kindness. So he pets the dog and he's like, you can be my friend.
Yeah, maybe that's why she hated Toto so much.
Along the way, there's bees, and she befriends the bees and gets them to come live in a little wooden box, and so they have honey. They find a baby snow monkey, which is how she gets her first monkey. It does not have wings, but it becomes her little pet. They meet a group. Are they called the Rafiki? The Skrull. I think they're called the Skrull. And it's a tribe. And their leader is in human form. But then that night, she speaks to a couple of the guests and sends them away, but keeps Elphaba. And she sheds her human skin and is an elephant. She's an elephant, not an elephant. And she is under a spell that forces her to appear human during the day. But she refuses to seek
assistance?
Yeah, she doesn't want to lose the spell because elephants are hunted.
Yeah, it's advantageous for 12 hours of the day for you not to be hunted.
Yeah. So they know, her tribe's people know she's an elephant at night and a human in the day, but no one else does. And she reveals her form to Elphaba because she can see that Elphaba is also not who she is. So she discusses how this is how she chooses safety. At this point in the world, animals have no rights. At all.
Yeah, it's been 7 years since it was already getting bad. So,
Yeah.
so this is like a version of masking or
Hiding.
being in the closet.
This to me, I think more modern audiences, I don't know if this was what he meant. Modern audiences would take this as being trans and passing as your assigned gender.
Yeah.
And hiding your true self. And I think this could also be seen as like passing as white if you're mixed.
Yeah.
But it's also just, how do some people deal with deadly oppression? Some of her quotes are really, really good. When the times are a crucible, when the air is full of crisis, she said, those who are most themselves are the victims. And she's telling Elphaba, if you are yourself, you are at risk. And so she tells Elphaba to pass herself off as a witch and make that her guise. Because she has told the elephant her purpose is to go to Kiamoko, face Fiero's widow, and get forgiveness. And the elephant is like, this is not a good story. You need a better story. The story is you are a witch. And she gives her 3 crows as her familiars. And Elphaba's like, gosh, my mother's rolling over in her grave. Me a witch. Because I don't do magic. I don't have magic. But she kind of does. Like, she can speak to the bees. She has some innate talent that hasn't really been used or dealt with. But is life worth living in the wrong form? Said Elfie. The interior doesn't change, she answered, except by self-involvement, of which be not afraid, and also beware. I have no interior, said Elphaba. This is where Elphaba starts talking about having no soul. She believes that she herself has no soul. Maybe others do. She does not. She is different and other than them. She has internalized all of those beliefs and has made that herself. Something told those bees to kill the cook, said Princess Nastoya. Elphaba felt herself go pale. So along the way, the cook disappeared. It was because he would go and hunt rabbits and didn't care if they were rabbits or rabbits. He just wanted something to put in the stew pot. Elphaba was incensed and thought very mean, hateful thoughts at him. And the bees killed him.
The bees are very empathetic to murder feelings.
Yes. And so it's kind of starting to be hinted that her feelings of hate cause effect in the real world. But the princess is still trying to talk to her and give her some hope. Listen to me, sister, she said. Remember this. Nothing is written in the stars. Not these stars, not any others. No one controls your destiny. Because Elphaba is still paranoid, and she still sees conspiracy everywhere. And it has only been reinforced by the death of Fiero and her own feeling of helplessness and failure.
Yeah, I guess that continuing feeling of everyone is out, or everything is a conspiracy, kind of explains why she is, like, so pissed off at Dorothy, because she thinks that Dorothy is literally plotting her demise.
Yes, yes. And at the end of the book, that is what kills her, essentially, is her own
Paranoia.
an intense fear and rage. They get to Kiamo Ko, Fiero's home. Elphaba collects her things and gets off the wagon train. Lear collects his things and walks over to her. "Oh, so you're stopping here, are you?" said Elfie. "Yes," he said. "With you." "With the crows, with the monkey, with the bees, and with the dog, and with the witch?" she said. "With me? Where else can I go?" he asked. "I'm sure I don't know," she answered. "I can take care of the dog," he said calmly. "I can collect the honey for you." "It makes no difference to me," she said. "All right," he said, and so Lear prepared to enter his father's house. The book is confirming for us that he is the child of Elphaba and Fiero.
Okay.
No one else in the book is ever sure. Only us as the reader knows for sure.
Okay.
But this is when we find out who this child is.
Yeah, I was just sitting here like, oh, okay, so that's definitely a thing. I was just like, yeah.
So Kiamo Ko is the stronghold that you actually see at the end of The Wizard of Oz. So it's like a small fortress.
And that's the Wicked Witch's castle?
In The Wizard of Oz, yes.
Okay.
Sarima, Fiero's widow, she lives there with her 5 sisters who are named 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 because they would have been allowed to get married off after she married Fiero. But because he has died, they cannot be married off unless Sarima remarries.
Okay.
It's part of their tribal rules of succession.
Huh.
Because, I don't know. It's kind of gone into, but it's kind of like, it's a side trail. Sarima has 3 children. They're named Irji, Manik, and Noor. And Elphaba comes in and she's just like, "I have something to tell you. I shall not eat. I shall do nothing else. I must tell you something." And Sarima's like, "No, I don't have to hear anything I don't want to hear." And she's like, "I'm responsible for your husband's death." And she's like, "Loads of people are. Don't want to hear it." Shuts her down. And Elphaba's like, "Maybe tomorrow." So she moves into a shed and is like, the next day, tries to talk to her. Sarima's like, "Nope, this is my house. I don't have to listen to anything I don't want to listen to. Nope.
I don't have to acknowledge you.
I do not have to. You cannot make me hear anything I don't want to hear." And Elphaba swears on her own life that she will not leave until Sarima has heard her out and forgiven her.
One of those might take a good bit longer than the other.
So they just kind of move in. And it's already almost winter, so they obviously have to overwinter there, so they give her a room up in a tower. Lear is just kind of a new child who lives there, and nobody takes care of him or does anything for him or cares about him at all. Because Elphaba never claimed him.
The cycle repeats.
Yeah. And Elphaba doesn't want to go by her name. She doesn't want to be known as Elphaba in this house.
So she's going by
They call her
Wicked?
They call her Auntie Guest, which turns into Auntie Witch. And they just call her Auntie because she has tried to collect a new identity. Like she was Sister Elphaba at the Mont, and now she's trying to gain forgiveness and start a new life. And she's stuck. She cannot be herself until she gets this thing. Irji and Manik are Fiero's sons, and Noor is the little girl. Manik enjoys tormenting Lear and making fun of him and torturing him because Irji is the heir to leadership, but Manik is the strong-willed one. At Learling Mess, the other children have presents, but Lear does not, and he's crushed. Noor takes pity on him and shares her gingerbread mouse with him because she has human feelings.
Very sad. Somebody kicked his puppy, too.
This part is so cute, though, and very funny. I have to read it to you. So Irji says, "Maybe Prunella left your cookie at your old house. Where did you used to live?" And he's like, "I don't know." And he started to cry. "Here, you can have the tail of my mouse, just the tail," said Noor kindly. "First, you have to say, 'May I please have the tail of your mouse?'" "May I please have the tail of your mouse?" said Lear, though his words were almost unintelligible. "And I promise to obey you." Lear mumbled on. The exchange was eventually completed. So she's like, "May I have your mouse? And you promise to obey me." "And I promise to obey you." To manipulate him. But it's such a little kid thing to do. It was very funny. So Elphaba goes with the sisters, who are completely bored out of their minds and basically servants in the house because they can't get married and can't do anything until Sarima remarries. And she tries to tell them she's the cause of Fiero's death, and they're like, "Dude, you heard the rule. If she won't hear you, we can't hear it, and we can't go tattle. Like, you have to follow her rules. She is the matriarch of this place. She is in charge." And so that breaks off the other chance she had of maybe getting Sarima Sarima's forgiveness and response.
Yeah.
Although the sisters do tell Elphaba that Sarima suspected Fiyero was having an affair with Glinda, and Glinda's husband had Fiyero killed. So that is the story Sarima has told herself, and she doesn't want Elphaba to change it.
Yeah, she's already accepted it, and she doesn't want to.
She doesn't want to have that story changed. She also doesn't want to deal with new emotions. You know, she's doing what she can to manage the household, raise the children. Once Irji is a man, he can become in charge of the tribe. You know, it's like she's just hanging on, managing what she has right now. Elphaba one day finds a book of magic in the attic that she calls the Grimoire. She can sort of read it, but the words kind of like flicker and are weird, but Sarima cannot. Sarima says an elderly sorcerer had brought it to Kyomoko for safekeeping. He claimed it was from another world, but they're like, you can read it. No, he didn't say we couldn't read it, so Elphaba takes it away to study it. One day, Irji suggests a game of hide and seek, and Manik convinces Lear to hide in the fish well. The fish well is a deep well in the basement of the house that has a lid on it, and inside of it is fish. Like inside of it, maybe it's like attached to an underground river or an underground creek, and
It's
it
like
has
a live well.
Yeah, just has a little stalk of fish in it. And Manik is like, if you hide in it, you can sit in the bucket and I'll close the lid and Nor won't find you. Nobody finds him for days.
I was gonna say. No one finds him ever.
Yeah, so it's springtime and they spot a caravan coming. It's Nanny who is there because somehow they found out Elphaba was at Kyomoko and she came to visit Elphaba. And so they go to get fish to have for dinner for Nanny and they find his body. Bloated and still. Nanny and Elphaba set to pumping his chest and breathing air into his mouth, and he comes back. He is revived.
Really?
Yes.
Is it because magic?
It is implied that possibly because they brought her Grimoire and they were like, you can do magic, you're Auntie Witch, please, please, please.
Yeah, because that feels like if he was in there for days,
Yeah,
he's been
he was
dead for some amount of time probably.
Well, the other thing of it was he hadn't been in the water initially, but because it's springtime, the water table was rising and it came up to where the bucket was. So it's possible he had stayed out of the water for quite a while, but with the flooding from the winter or from the snows, it had like recently happened. But he was stuck in a cold, dark well for days. So Nanny wraps him up and wants to put him to bed because she's the motherly, take care of everybody person.
Right.
She says, we're not out of the woods yet. He may still die of exposure. Where does he sleep? Said Sarima. They all looked at one another. The sisters looked at Elphaba, and Elphaba looked at the children. Oh, sometimes on the floor in our room, sometimes on the floor in Nor's, said Manik. He wants to sleep in my bed too, but I push him out, said Nor. He's too fat. There'd be no room for me and my dollies. He doesn't even have a bed? Sarima coldly asked Elfie. Well, don't ask me. This is your house, said Elfie. Nanny glared around at the women and children. Well, it shouldn't take Nanny to have to find him a proper bed, but if there's none other for him, he can come up to my room and I'll sleep on the floor. And so this, after months of living here, everyone finally realizes he doesn't even have a bed. He has been completely ignored.
Yeah.
Lear said that there was a fish in the well, and it whispered to him that he was Fiero's son, and Irji and Manik and Nor are his siblings, which makes him decide that Elphaba could not be his mother, because he would have been green.
Yeah, I guess that makes as much sense as anything.
But Sarima waves it away and is like, well, it couldn't be true because goldfish can't talk. Because
But they can.
She is, well... That is a question in this book because they're underwater. Who would talk to them or hear them? Goldfish can't talk if you can't talk back and hear them. They're always underwater.
I disagree.
Well, in this case, anyway.
I don't know why, but I disagree.
The goldfish in the well ends up being real.
Okay.
And it's finally somewhat established that it is Madame Morrible's familiar.
Oh.
Or her other self.
Why would Madame Morrible's familiar know that information?
Because, and this is the kick at the end, she knew Fiero and Elphaba were having an affair.
Okay.
And she's the one who told the wizard about them. She has been spying on Elphaba the whole time.
Okay.
Because she has seen that Elphaba is powerful
and
will do
terrorist
something.
stuff.
Well, she didn't care so much about the terrorist things. She knew that she could at some point be a disruptor. A disruptor to society.
Yeah.
And she wanted her to be in a box. somewhere, somehow. So the goldfish is there spying on them and knows what's going on in the house by living in the well. But nobody finds it until the end. Nanny wants to know if Lear is Elphaba's son, and this is when Elphaba explains that she was senseless and has no maternal feelings for him. But after he nearly died and she brought him back to life, that fear, that moment of shame, not knowing where he slept, seeing him almost die, she suddenly feels maternal in that brief moment. And she tries to put her hand on him and give him a hug, and he shrugs her off because he's shocked at physical touch.
Yeah, I get that.
And she feels rebuffed and angry because the moment she wants to give him attention, he is suddenly supposed to respond.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't understand how any of this works either, not having been raised with affection or touch as a child.
So a feeling of rejection at the moment, that some warmth would have been probably crucial for both of them.
For any bonding, they would have both had to respond with warmth at the same time. They both would have had to be primed.
Yeah.
But I think Nanny decides that Lear is Elphaba's son, and she starts giving Lear a lot more attention than she does Nor and Ergi. So when they had found Lear, Manic heard them all yelling when they pulled him out of the well. "Oh, is that where he is?" said Manic in a funny voice. "You know he said he wanted to go down in that fish well once." And Elphaba's immediately suspicious. Because nobody would want to go into a fish well.
Yeah.
"I cannot believe it. This is so terrible," said Manic excitedly, and Elphaba gave him a sharp, hateful look. So she has decided, proof or not, that Manic is the cause.
Guilty.
And guilty. Lear survived, but Manic did not. The icicle that Elphaba trained her gaze on, thinking on the weapons she needed to fight such abuse, it broke like a lance from the eaves and drove whistling downward and caught him in the skull as he went out to find some new way of beleaguering Lear.
So she's
Accidentally murdering a child.
Semi-accidentally.
Because she had been
That's
sitting
confusing.
discussing hot anger versus cold anger with Sarima because they believe that women have cold anger and men have hot anger.
Yeah.
And Elphaba sitting there thinking about how she has both, and also how an icicle is created from hot and cold. You have to have the heat of the sun to create dripping water, and the cold to create a lance. And by staring at it, by coincidence, but everyone kind of thinks that it's her fault that Manic died because...
She's got bad vibes, everybody knows
now
it.
there's bad vibes. And everyone is calling her a witch. She is reading in the grimoire and trying to study magic, and she's trying to hunt through it to find something to stop the wizard and stop all this evil. And so, they're stuck there. She wants to do things, she wants to change things, but she feels like she can't. And the term of Elfie's imprisonment, as an unwilling traitor, as an exiled Mont, as a hapless mother, as a failed insurrectionist, as a witch in disguise, remained unchanged, because Sarima would not listen to her and would not grant her forgiveness. And she has decided nothing can move on in her life without Sarima forgiving her.
Weirdly fixated at that point.
So they get news from the broader world because Elfie was in the Mont for 7 years, and now she's been all year up in Kyomoko. And Nanny is talking about how they have these summer camps for Munchkinlander children where they learn how to spy on their parents. And they're creating indoctrination camps for children to cause unrest.
So they're wanting the children to
spy on their parents because Munchkinland wants to secede from Oz.
Okay.
It wants to take itself away from the wizard's rule, and they want Nessa Rose, who is now the Throp, to be in charge of it. And they're trying to halt that by indoctrinating children and creating them into little soldiers. Which Elphaba, suddenly having maternal feelings, is horrified at this. And Nanny doesn't know that's what she's talking about. She's discussing a funny little summer camp where children go for a month and the government trains them and does fun, exercises with them. And
it's kind of like me when I'm explaining a book. I totally get what I'm talking about, and I'm 3 layers deep, and nobody else knows what the hell I'm talking about.
Yeah. Only Elphaba is seeing, conspiracy everywhere and indoctrination and evil. And so it feels like the outer world is starting to infringe on Kyomoko. It's starting to come in and remind Elphaba she had other purpose She had a purpose at one point that was beyond begging for forgiveness. And to prove that the outside world is coming, a group of soldiers show up at Kamako claiming to be doing reconnaissance, and Elphaba tries to chase them away and scream at them and say, "You're not welcome here. Go away." But Sarima is the one in charge of the castle and welcomes them in and gives them housing and feeds them because she's like, we're not at war with the wizard. Turning them away would make us at war.
Right.
They say they're on a reconnaissance trip. I have to take them at face value. I have to feed and house them because we have diplomatic ties here.
Yeah, making the political decision.
Yes. And so Elphaba is furious. Lear falls in love with soldiers who march around, pay him some attention. He becomes their water boy. He follows them around and marches and shines their shoes because someone is giving him... Because Elphaba felt this maternal feeling and does not ever give him actual attention. She just glowers and bristles in her tower. Nor is enamored with them because they're these grown men who give her attention. They don't touch her or anything, but she's, 10 or 11 and suddenly handsome soldiers are here and it's so exciting. All of the sisters are like, oh, handsome soldiers. We will, pretty up and clean up the place. Yeah. So most of them are excited. Elphaba is afraid because she knows that this is bad. Yeah. This is bad news, but she can't do anything about it.
And at this point, she's kind of anti-socializing herself and further othering herself in the place where she sort of belongs at this point.
She doesn't have a good reason to tell them to turn them away. She has foreboding and bad feelings.
Yeah, there's a jump there that isn't quite reasonable.
Right. And this is where she sees conspiracies everywhere. So they look at her and like, well, that's just you going on again. You've cried wolf too many times. Yeah. And even Nanny is like, oh, you always were conspiracy theorists on everything, And she's like, but. And they won't listen to her. And then they get a letter from Frex to Elphaba asking her to please come help Nessa Rose rule Munchkinland under rebellion from Oz. So she has become queen of Munchkinland, but she is headstrong and unwilling to listen to anyone else. And Elphaba has no interest in ruling, or she would have gone to Munchkinland and taken up the rule as eminent throp. But she has realized she can ride the broom. So she has a way of transporting herself halfway across the country that would be quick. Because otherwise, if you're on a wagon, it would take months. She has learned enough magic to ride her broom. She tells everyone that she's going to lock herself away in her room. Don't bother me. I'll be in bed for a week. And she gets on her broom and flies to Munchkinland. So Elphaba decides to fly to Munchkinland and see what's going on. Frex is there and he's worried because Nessa has become headstrong. Remember those beautiful shoes he made for her?
The shoes made her a bitch.
No, Glinda magicked them, so they helped her walk upright and she didn't need help anymore.
Oh.
She still needed someone to feed her, but she no longer had a bad sense of balance. She talks about how she would get phantom arms and feel like she had invisible arms. And it has made her feel like she is self-sufficient and doesn't need anyone to tell her anything. But she's still very deeply religious, and she uses her religious zealotry to rule over them like a theocratic rule. Instead of escaping the tyranny of the wizard, they go to theocratic tyranny under Nessa. Frex is like, Elphaba, you could at least talk sense into her. She would listen to you. We could manage this more responsibly. And Elphaba's like, I hate these people. Why am I going to help?
Valid.
She just I don't care about this. I will not do anything. She has no sense of obligation to Munchkinland or Nessa or anybody there. For one brief moment, she is vulnerable to Frex because he's talking about how Nessa doesn't need anyone and he thinks that the shoes are dangerous because of the way they make her feel superior. She doesn't need advice or help in any way. I wish you had made them for me, Papa, she said in a quiet voice. You didn't need them. You had your voice, your intensity, even your cruelty as your armor. My cruelty? She reared back. Oh, you are a fiendish little thing, said Frex. But so what? Children grow into and out of themselves. You were a terror when you first were around other children. You only calmed down when we began to travel and you got to hold the baby. It was Nessa Rose who tamed you, you know. You have her to thank. She was holy and blessed even from the day she was born. Even as an infant, she soothed your wildness with her obvious need. You don't remember that, I suppose.
Still giving the disabled child all the credit for Elphaba's character building. That is fucked.
And this is the family mythology. This is how Frex remembers her as a child. She was a terror, and Nessa Rose helped her be human.
Jeez.
And the shoes are this symbol of his love, his devotion as a father. She feels unloved, and even admitting that she wished she had his love, he responds with, well, you were vicious.
You were an evil child.
You're an evil child. Why would I love you?
Ah,
It took
jeez.
your sister to allow any familial feeling in this household.
Jeez.
We can see where the obsession with the shoes is coming from.
Yeah.
We have been building because you have to have
Yeah,
the
you gotta go somewhere
dichotomy.
crazy for someone to be that obsessed with a pair of shoes.
Right. How do you build up in someone's life the intense need for a pair of shoes that would take her to murder someone? Like, how do you take someone to that level
And make it reasonable.
and make it reasonable? Which is why all of these things, the glass-blowed beads, Nessa Rose's disability, the devotion and love that Frex shows her and not Elphaba, like it all builds step by step by step. And each one by itself could be managed. It's a lifetime, 30 plus years of these slights and even her admitting her emotion. I wish those shoes were for me. Well, you don't need them. You have your own 2 feet.
Yeah.
I wish you'd made them for me. Well, you didn't need them. An unwillingness to accept her emotion of rejection. An unwillingness to accept their role in it.
That's fucked.
Elphaba decides to, hang around long enough to hang out with Nessie and, see what's going on and kind of get a feel for stuff, but she is not going to stay. She's like, I have no interest in helping. I've spent my whole life helping Nessa Rose. I will not give her a minute more. So she decides to sit in while Nessa Rose passes judgment, and this farm woman comes in and says, I need help with my maid. And Nessa's like, well, what's wrong? And she says that the maid is in love with a woodcutter, and if she runs off with the woodcutter, there'll be no one to bring in the crops because her 3 sons have already gone off to fight in the rebellion against Oz. So she's putting it at Nessa's feet that it's her responsibility to prevent the maid from running off with the woodcutter. It's her fault that this woman's sons are gone.
For the good of the town, I guess.
Well, they're fighting a rebellion against Oz.
Yeah.
All of Munchkinland is. What do you have in mind? I brought you his axe. I thought you might bewitch it and cause it to kill him. Fie, said Elphaba. But Nessa Rose said, oh, well, that wouldn't be very nice. Very nice? Elfie said, no, indeed, it wouldn't be very nice, Nessie. Well, you're the legal answer around here, said the old woman. What do you suggest? I might bewitch his axe and let it slip, said Nessa Rose thoughtfully. Just enough, perhaps, to cut off his arm. I know from experience that a person without an arm isn't as desirable to the opposite sex as one fully armed.
But then he can't do his job. Also,
And he will starve and die. But
yeah.
Yeah.
Also, you're cutting off a guy's arm.
Yeah.
That's
But-
fucked up.
What's interesting is that this requires a magic spell. Nessa Rose, you're not a witch. I don't believe it, said Elfie. You don't do spells, do you? The righteous person can work miracles in the honor of the unnamed god, said Nessa Rose calmly. Show me that axe if you've brought it. And she learned magic and sorcery at Shiz, but she is using her religious dogma to pretend it's a power coming from her god.
Ah, okay.
And so she bewitches the axe so that it will cut off the arm of the woodcutter. And the old woman promised to give Elfie 2 sheep and a cow in exchange for the spell. And Elfie is horrified. Why are you trading animals? They should have... She thought in Munchkinland that the animals would still have rights.
Right.
She saw the degradation of rights in the Emerald City, in Shiz, and all these other places. For some reason, she thought home would still be good. She didn't realize that home had gone the same way as everywhere else. So she goes out to talk to the sheep and the cow. She sees that they're tethered in a pen, and she's very upset because she liked Dr. Dillamond and she has spoken with animals. And to see them being treated like animals reminds her of her fight that she
Set
left.
out to do.
Yes, she set out to do, and then she just abandoned it and failed. You're the new animals brought here by that old vengeful fiend, said Elphaba. The cow looked over as if unaccustomed to being addressed. The sheep made no sign of having understood. What's your beef? Said the cow in a dark humor. I've been living in the Vinkus, said Elfie. There aren't many animals there. At one time, I was an agitator in the animal rights grassroots sweep. I don't really know how things stand for Munchkinlander animals now. What can you tell me? I can tell you to mind your own business, said the cow. And the sheep? These sheep can tell you nothing. They've gone dumb. Are they sheep? Does that happen? They talk about humans becoming vegetables or nuts or even fruits, said the cow. But they don't mean it literally. Sheep don't become sheep. They become mute sheep. They don't really need to be discussed here as if they're not listening, by the way. So she is like, how do I deal with this? Here's this small injustice right in front of me. What can I do right now? And she's like, well, I've come to free you. And they're like, free? Go where? Do what? As soon as we wander away, someone else will claim us and make us be their servants.
Yeah.
We have such few rights we don't own ourselves. Someone will come along and claim us.
Yeah, that's like the equivalent of trying to give, like, freedom, well, I guess directly, like, freedom to someone who lived in the southern United States before...
like enslaved
the
people.
emancipation, yeah. Like, where would you go?
Right, without being able to go to a place where your skin does not automatically make you a slave. How would you have any freedom? Anyone would look at you and then take you and force you to go back or just sell you as a new slave.
Yeah.
Like, there would be no options.
In that case, it's better to not make a fuss, as one character said. And, yeah, it sucks.
Free to go where? Do what? We'd get from here to Lower Muckslop and be roped in again, subjected to slavery under the wizard and catechisms under the eminent Throp. We don't exactly blend in with those creepy little Munchkinlander humans. You've gone a bit dour, said Elphaba. Haven't you ever heard of a mad cow? She answered. Sweetheart, my udder is sore from their daily yanking. I am tapped for milk morning and night. I won't even go into what it's like to be mounted by just never mind. But worst, my children have been fattened on milk and slaughtered for veal. I could hear their cries from the abattoir, and they didn't even bother to move me out of hearing range. Here she turned her head to the wall, and the sheep came up on either side of her, pressing like a living pair of warm bookends against her lower sides and underbelly. And then Elphaba realizes why they gave the sheep and the cow to Nessa. She's going to use them as a living sacrifice and murder them in front of her congregation as a new way of pacifying the Munchkinlanders.
Oh, weird.
Now you must be wrong in that, said the witch. I do object. Nessa Rose is a strict unionist. They don't go in for blood sacrifice. Times change, said the cow, and she's got a population of ill-educated, nervous subjects to pacify. What, pray tell, works better than ritual slaughter? So Elphaba's come back to be asked to help. She walks in and sees it's a shit show, and she says, fuck this, I'm going home. Because she has a chance here to actually make a difference. She actually could come in and possibly get Nessa Rose to change or take on power and have a responsibility. And instead she says, I hate these Munchkinlanders. Screw them. I'm out of here. Not because she has any moral sense of that working with Nessa would be wrong. She just doesn't care about the people here.
Yeah.
She cares about these couple of animals, has seen that it's degraded so far she can't do anything, and just gives up and walks away. She opens the door to the shed and says, you're free. And the cow and the sheep wander off. And when she goes back, she tells Nessa Rose, well, I freed them. And Nessa Rose is like, well, you can have your pet little things. I don't care. You have power around here if you chose to wield it. And she's like, are you going to stay and help me? Like, actually do things that matter? And she's like, nope, bye. So this is one of those, like, this is, like, where she could have changed her mind and done something.
Could have made some effective difference.
But it would have meant working within the system. And she has only ever chosen rebellion and secret
to buck
societies.
the system, yeah.
Yes. is not willing to, like, engage.
She's not willing to compromise in
At all.
order to, in order to, make some changes.
Your shoes have made you strong, said Elfie. I didn't know shoes could do that. I don't think you need me. Don't lose those shoes, though. Well, you can have my shoes, my dear, over my dead body. I'll rewrite my will and leave them to you, though what they would do for you, I can hardly imagine. They didn't grow me new arms. Perhaps enchanted shoes won't change the color of your skin, but will make you enticing enough so that it won't matter. Because she's just, it's still going to be mean.
Yeah.
But this is where the promise of the shoes will go to Elphaba when Nessa Rose dies. This is where that promise is made.
Yeah.
Elphaba owns those shoes when Nessa Rose dies.
Right.
And those shoes symbolize the love her father never gave her. But once Nessa Rose dies, she can have that symbol.
Yeah.
And you have
had
to
get to
follow...
a crazy place to get there,
Yeah.
but yeah, you got there.
You got there. You have to go through each little step along the way to get to that point, and it actually makes sense.
Right.
And that this is kind of teasing and a joke. Yeah, you can have my shoes over my dead body. But then she takes that and says, those are mine. Because when the house falls on Nessa Rose, in her heart, she's like, those shoes are mine. So she flies on her broom back to Kiamoko, and it's empty, except for Nanny and Lear. The soldiers found out that Elphaba was gone, and they took that opportunity to kidnap the whole family and take them away.
So the conspiracy was real.
It was real. She spends several years trying to get them back or find out where they are or learn enough in her grimoire to do a spell to kill the wizard. And Lear just waits hand and foot on Nanny, and Nanny feeds Elphaba. And Elphaba learns enough magic from the grimoire to start sewing wings onto the monkeys.
Oh, okay.
She tries to teach Chistry, her original monkey, how to talk, but it never really worked because it seems like he can imitate speech, but he does not become sentient. And that is part of her goal, is to find out how you make an animal an animal.
Yeah.
And so she just goes slowly mad in this castle. She cannot get forgiveness from Surimo. She cannot rescue them. She doesn't know where they are. She can't leave. She doesn't have a home.
And then this hick bitch comes from fucking Kansas and kills her sister with a
kills
house.
her sister with a house.
And then steals the shoes that are rightfully hers, god damn it.
Actually, Glinda gave them to her because she didn't think Elphaba would want them.
Okay. Yeah, that's gotta sting.
Yep, so she flies back to Munchkinland and meets up with Glinda and is like, those shoes are mine. Those are my shoes. And Glinda's like, well, we couldn't have let them stay in Munchkinland because the Munchkinlanders were ready to crown Dorothy as queen and say that those shoes were the power to the throne and put her on the pedestal. She was a poor child. Who didn't know where she came from or where she was going. And so Glinda sent Dorothy to the Emerald City to see if Oz would know where Kansas was, because nobody knew where you would find Kansas.
Yeah, and he's from the normal world.
Right, nobody really knows that, but...
It's the deep lore.
He has spies and maps, and he would be the one to know if such a place as Kansas existed. Because they're thinking maybe it's like a hamlet or a town.
Yeah.
And she was just in this house that got picked up and thrown away. So it could have come from anywhere.
Right.
The Munchkinlanders, over the last few years, had grown more and more tired of Nessa Rose because she just became more and more religious and fundamentalist and used her rule to enforce theocracy. So by the time she dies, they're very happy to get rid of her. And some are starting to talk about reunification with Oz. Others are talking about creating a democracy and establishing their own ruler. Glinda's worried there was going to be a little civil war, and Dorothy would be the spark.
A little lollipop guild civil war. That'd
Yep.
be funny.
Yep. So they kind of like do this little catch up of Glinda and Elphaba. They're like just kind of chatting. Elphaba is trying to remind Glinda of that time that Madame Morrible tried to put a spell on them and tell them they would go off and do these things. And maybe it was true because Glinda's this high society sorceress with all this power, and Nessa Rose became the head of Munchkinland, and here she is in a fortress in Vinkus. And Glenda's like, my memory is just as good as yours. Madame Morrible proposed that I be an adept of Gillikin, that you be an adept of Munchkinland, and Essa be an adept of Quadling Country. But she got it all wrong. Forget the details, said the witch tartly. I mean, Glinda, is it possible we could be living our entire adult lives under someone's spell? How could we tell if we were the pawns of someone's darker game? I know, I see it in your face. Elfie, you're sniffing conspiracy theories again. But you were there. You heard what I heard. How do you know your life hasn't been pulled by the strings of some malign magic? I've always felt like a pawn, said the witch. My skin color's been a curse. My missionary parents made me sober and intense. My school days brought me up against political crimes against animals. My love life imploded and my lover died. And if I had any life's work of my own, I haven't found it yet, except in animal husbandry, if you could call it that. The summation of her life.
Yeah.
Glinda doesn't think she's a pawn, but this is kind of like... some people have been telling Elphaba she is free to make her own decisions.
But she's
other
never
people,
felt free.
she's never felt free. And these other people have intimated that she's their pawn.
And opposed to Glinda, who has never felt manipulated in her entire life.
Because she would never notice or care. She just wants to be beautiful and powerful and rich. So Elphaba freaks out about the shoes, and Glinda initially is like, well, you didn't need them. Why do you want them? And then turned it to, well, I was doing it to save Munchkinland from a civil war. You know, excuses, because no one is willing to say,
oh, I fucked you over.
I'm sorry, I made a mistake. No one will ever tell her, I'm sorry, I made a mistake.
Yeah.
No one has ever apologized to her. And then, so the witch is, screaming about the shoes. Glinda reached out and touched the witch's elbow. They won't make your father love you any better, she said.
Hard truth.
The witch pulled back. They stood glaring at each other. All the witch could do was insist, I want those shoes. She won't get Surima's forgiveness. Now she has something else she can want.
Yeah, she can't be forgiven. She can't make effective change, but she can get those goddamn shoes.
She can somehow get those shoes. So they have the funeral, and after the funeral, the wizard comes to Munchkinland, and Frex is too old and frail to greet him, so Elphaba meets with the wizard. And he does this kind of whole, I'm here to check out the land. Are you going to be in charge here? Because if you are, I need to deal with that. Oh, well, if you're not, I need to deal with that. I never intended to be a politician here. I came here from another world and just got stuck. And they see she had a piece of the grimoire in her pocket because she wanted to show it to Frex and he couldn't read it. And the wizard picked it up and was like, this is from my world. I can read it. And the witch is like, well, you're lying because I can read it.
I see.
And
that's why she can only sort of read it.
Yes.
Or has trouble reading it. Okay.
Yeah. He's like, I want the rest of this book. That's why I came here in the first place. A sorcerer hid the book here so nobody else could get a hold of it, and I want it. I want it so I can take it home and be powerful in my land. And she says, I will give you the rest of the grimoire if you tell me what happened to Surima's family. And he says they're all dead, except for Noor, who he shows to Elphaba is bound up in chains and is babbling and doesn't know or respond to her. So now she hates him, is afraid of him, and can't touch him because he has Noor, the last piece of Surima she will ever see.
Yeah.
Any chance of forgiveness that could possibly come from that lineage is in Noor.
Yeah.
And he won't let Noor go because that's his only protection from her, and he's terrified of her because Madame Morrible had warned him that Elphaba was going to be a problem. She could see it. That's where she finds out that Morrible was the one who told the wizard that Fiyero and she were having an affair. And that's why they got rid of him. And then when they found out that Elphaba was at Kielmoko, they sent the soldiers there to keep an eye on her. And then they stole the family away to control her. So all of this conspiracy, this feeling of being followed and manipulated and managed, he's saying, yeah, that was me. Yeah, that was me.
Yeah, it's not paranoia if they're actually out to get you.
Yeah. So she leaves this with the knowledge that the children are dead. Surima and her sisters are dead. There's nothing she can do. And it was Morrible who caused this. And she thinks, I'm going to go to Shiz and murder Madame Morrible. This will fix it. This will make me feel better.
Just gone off the rails.
She goes off the rails. She flies down to Shiz. She finds the room that Madame Morrible is in, and Madame Morrible has just died and is still warm.
Damn it.
And so she
Robbed
smacks
of
her
vengeance.
around and nothing happens. And
beating
she's
a
like,
corpse.
yes. And then she's like, well, I want them to think I murdered her. So she...
So fucking petty. I respect it.
She picks up a big trophy and just smashes her skull in. And then she goes and finds some old school friends and has dinner with them and boasts about killing Madame Morrible. And they're very amused. Like, oh, look
this is
at
so
you.
funny.
You're so evil. Oh, how cute. And because they're high society, they don't call the police.
Right.
They don't care.
They don't care.
This is a funny story to tell tomorrow. So she can't get out. She gets drunk. She can't get back on the broom. She can only...
Shouldn't fly and drive.
She doesn't fly and drive. She wanders away. She wanders away and walks up to the Clock of the Time Dragon, which is in town and open for business.
Full circle.
Full circle. And now she's like, wait a minute, you've been at all these times. You have been at all these places. It's you little bad dwarf. And he's like, yeah, me, yep. I am not from this world. I am from a different world, and I'm guardian of the book that you call the Grimoire. I try to keep it safe from people from my world. I don't think that she fully realizes it, but the reader, going back through it again, realizes that he was at all of these key moments that caused things to happen in her life.
Oh.
And he manipulated her birth to where she was born in the Clock of the Time Dragon and were in solitude and then killed Turtle Heart and ended up in Qualdling Country, and like all of these things that happened affected her life. And she's like...
To what end, though? Like, why would he purposely do that? Is he doing it on purpose, or is it just happen to be he's there when these pivotal things happen to her?
I'm drunk and disorderly, she said, and I cannot take any more riddles. I killed someone today. I can kill you too. You didn't kill her. She was already dead, said the dwarf calmly. And you can't kill me, for I'm immortal. But you try very hard at life. So I will tell you this. I am the guardian of the book, and I was brought to this dreaded forsaken land to watch over the book's history, to keep it from getting back to where it comes from. I am not good. I am not bad. But I am locked here, condemned to a deathless life to guard the book. I don't care what happens to you or anyone else, but I protect the book. That is my charge. I work through events. I live on the sidelines. I dabble in cause and effect. I watch how the misbegotten creatures of this world live their lives. I interfere only to keep the book safe. To some extent, I can see what's coming, and to that extent, I meddle in the affairs of men and beasts. He jigged like a little fiend. You see me here, you see me there. Having second sight is a great advantage in the security business. You work with Yackle. We sometimes have the same intentions, and we sometimes do not. Her interests seem different than mine. So Yackle ends up being, through inference in some aspects and directly in others, Yackle was the one who sold the pills to Nanny that lost Nessa Rose her arms, was the one who sold the shoes to Frex, who was Mother Yackle at the Mont and gave Elphaba her broom and told her it was tied to her destiny. Did all of these little random things that just created this domino effect. The dwarf spoke in a bright offhand tone. You are neither this nor that, or shall I say both this and that, both of Oz and of the other world. Your old Frex was always wrong, always was wrong. You were never a punishment for his crimes. You are a half-breed. You are a new breed. You are a grafted limb. You are a dangerous anomaly. Always you are drawn to the composite creatures, the broken and reassembled, for that is what you are. Can you be so dull that you have not figured this out? So he gives her a little show. Act 1 is the story of Saint Elphaba, who was part of the religious lore. And I don't know why he shows it to her. Act 2, the birth of evil. There's little puppets, and a figurine who was Melina kissed her parents goodbye and went off with Frex, a handsome little puppet with a short black beard and a jaunty step. They stopped in a small hut, and Frex kissed her and continued on to preach. All through the rest of the scene, he was off to one side, yammering away to some peasants who were busy screwing each other on the ground before him, hacking each other to pieces and eating their sexual parts, which ran with real gravy. You could smell the garlic and sautéed mushrooms. Melina... Melina, at home, yawned and waited and teased her pretty hair. Along came a man whom the witch could not identify at first. He had a small black bag, and from it he extracted a green glass bottle. He gave it to Melina to drink, and when she fell into his arms, either stupefied and drunk, as the witch was tonight, or liberated. It wasn't clear. The traveler and Melina made love in the same bouncy rhythm as Frex's parishioners. Frex started to dance to the rhythm himself. Then, when the act of love was done, the traveler pulled himself off Melina. He snapped his fingers, and a balloon with a basket beneath descended from the fly space above. The traveler got in. It was the wizard.
Right.
Oh, nonsense, said the witch. This is pure poppycock. And that's the end of the play. So now she returns home and she is trying to decide whether she believes the dwarf that she is the wizard's daughter. And she digs through Nanny's things and finds a little green bottle that says magic elit on it. Like the elixir got cut off.
Right.
And she's like, where did you get this? And Nanny's like, oh, I don't remember. I'm 86 years old.
Valid. Yeah.
And so Elphaba starts taking the potion and having dreams. And she keeps dreaming of the other world. And she sees the wizard in the other world. And then one day she watches him swim into the ocean, which terrifies her. And so she stops taking it and tries to keep herself awake all the time.
Okay. So that...
So she goes from trying to see visions and sleep to being terrified of going to sleep, because when she watched him swim into the ocean, she felt like she herself was on fire because of the water.
Right. Okay.
So she starts devolving into...
Getting continually crazier until we get to the point that she is in the movie, I guess.
Yes. She remembered that Dorothy was going to Oz with the shoes, but she kind of couldn't deal with it at that moment. All this other stuff was going on. She just couldn't deal with it. So she's like, I'll deal with it later. Oz probably stole the shoes and evil him, but I'll get them sometime.
And your little dog, too.
Yeah. So she goes back and she's like, I can't sleep. I will not sleep. I'm terrified of sleeping. I will stay awake all the time. And does, Red Bull, all that stuff. One afternoon, a few weeks later, Lear came back all hot and bothered, and he has heard rumors. She's like, come on, spill the beans, and he gets all coy, and finally tells her that the lion, the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, and Dorothy got in to see the wizard and asked him for 4 wishes. And the wizard told Dorothy he would grant them their wishes when they had, you haven't stuttered in years. Don't start again or I'll beat you. Dorothy and his friends have to come here and kill you, he finished. The soldier said it's because you murdered an old lady in Shiz, a famous old lady, and you're an assassin. Also, you're crazy. So, her goal...
Causing her own demise, yeah. Classic villain shit.
Yeah. And so that is the premise he can use, that she needs to be killed because she went and smashed in that lady's head and then went and bragged about it.
Yeah.
And that gives him enough, reason to say, I can send Dorothy. And if Dorothy gets killed...
deniability.
Yeah. If Dorothy gets killed, that gets her out of his way. And if the witch dies, that gets her out of the way. Because
so it's win-win.
It's win-win. And she's like, oh, that's silly. That little child can't kill me. Like, what on earth?
Yeah, that'd be crazy. Almost as crazy as if I had a bucket of water in my castle where I live, where I'm deathly afraid of water.
But Lear, if there's even the slightest chance that there's any truth to these rumors, you had better stay away from Red Windmill for a time. They might kidnap you and hold you for ransom until I give myself up to the schoolgirl and her needy companions. I want to meet Dorothy, he said. You're not that age already. Please preserve us, she said. I always intended to pickle you before you got to puberty. Well, I'm not getting kidnapped, so don't worry, he said. Besides, I want to be here when they get here. Worry is the last thing I'd do if you got kidnapped, she answered. It'd be your own damn fault and a great relief to me to have one less mouth to feed. Oh well, then who'd carry the firewood up all those stairs in the winter? Like, she's still treating him like a nuisance.
Right.
And he now has this new person to latch onto. He wants to meet Dorothy. She sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And he has fallen in love with her just from the stories.
Huh. So we get to the incident.
We're getting, yes, very close. So she has been sitting upright trying to sleep with her, arm on the table. So when she falls asleep, it falls down and jerks her awake. And she's all paranoid because this girl is coming to kill her. And Lear doesn't even seem to care. And all this thing. And so
She's spiraling, yeah.
she's spiraling. Now she has started thinking that the scarecrow is Fiyero in disguise. Because she wants him to still be alive. And the Tin Man is some TikTok creature, so that couldn't be Fiyero. And the lion must be the lion cub that was at Shiz when she was there, and she had tried to stand up for him. So in her mind, Fiyero is the scarecrow who will love her. The lion will be sympathetic because he'll remember her. And it won't be this big deal. They won't try to kill her. So they see people coming up the way. She pulls out her, the looking glass and sees them. And she tells the dog who, this was the pet dog that came with them.
Toto, yeah.
Killyjoy. No, this is Elphaba's dog.
Oh, okay.
The one that her and Lear took care of.
Okay.
That dog was half wolf and has bred many more little dogs.
Huh.
So she has a pack of half wolf dogs.
Okay.
She sees that they're coming. She says, they've come so far, they won't wait now. She said, go Killyjoy, go find them and show them the quickest way here. She loosed the senior dog. Him and his pack ran down to go bring the friends here. But the dogs didn't come back because the Tin Man
killed them.
chopped their heads off.
Yeah. Okay.
The witch danced with rage. Your dog is dead. Look what they did. Well, I didn't like that dog much anymore. He had a good long life. Because he's still entranced with Dorothy.
Yeah.
You're
Just
awfully on edge for someone about
unhinged.
to have company, he said sullenly. They're supposed to be coming to kill me, if you remember, she said, although she had forgotten that, as she had forgotten her desire for the shoes until she saw them again in the glass. The wizard had not demanded them of Dorothy. So now she turns around and she tells the crows, her familiars, go, look with your eyes more closely than I can. Pull the mask off the scarecrow so we can know who he is. Peck the eyes out of Dorothy and the lion. So she's decided they're bad. So she was going to welcome them. Now they're bad.
She's on the roller coaster.
She is on a roller coaster. So the crows go to see if the scarecrow is Fiyero. And Annie comes up and Lear says, she sent the crows out to blind the guests coming for dinner. What? She's blinding the guests coming for dinner. Well, that's one way to avoid having to dust, I suppose.
Ha.
I feel like the end of this has lots of really funny lines.
Yeah, he's successfully tied everything together in a manageable way, so now it's time to just kind of have fun with it.
Lear says, well, I guess the scarecrow knows how to scare crows all right. Why? What's he done? They're not coming back, that's all I'll say. So we've dealt with the dogs, we've dealt with the crows. Come on, bees, work with me now, all together. We need a little sting, a little zip, we want a little nasty. So she sends her bees down to sting them, to make them go away. And the scarecrow throws straw all over Dorothy and the lion. So they attack the Tin Man and their stingers get bumped off and they all die. So all the bees are dead.
Yeah.
So all that we have left is the monkeys. And she's like, well, it's getting dark. They're going to fall off a cliff and die. Monkeys, go pick up the lion and Dorothy and bring them here so they don't die. She's just gone without sleep for weeks.
Right.
She's gone mad with rage and jealousy. She's now doesn't know if she wants to welcome them or wants to kill them.
Not giving them the proper context for why
All
she's
of these
like this. She's just crazy.
So the flying monkeys go down, pick up the lion and Dorothy and bring them up. And she wants to get Dorothy alone to find out, are you here to kill me? The lion is like trying to protect her and Lear is trying to kiss her and it's all a big chaotic mess. So finally Elphaba gets fed up. She picks up Toto, hands him to the monkey and says, put this down the fish well so I can have a minute. And so the lion goes chasing the monkey and Toto, and she locks the door and has Dorothy alone.
So they can have a reason to go find the goldfish or whatever, yeah.
So she's like, are you here to kill me? And Dorothy says, I'm so sorry I killed your sister. Will you please forgive me? And Elphaba, who never got forgiveness for killing Fiyero, is furious that she is expected to give forgiveness to someone when she never got it herself.
Right.
And Dorothy can't take off the shoes. They're magicked to her feet. They're locked on.
So she's just fucking incensed.
And she picks up her broom and it catches on fire and she's waving it around because she's just screaming with rage. And a piece of the broom falls off and catches her dress on fire. And Dorothy says, I'll save you. And so she dies. And it's about the same as it was at the end of The Wizard of Oz.
Right.
And we see how someone could be built up so much into a villain that they become the villain. Even though all along the way, she didn't intentionally mean to do the horrid things she wanted to do. She didn't.
Yeah, it didn't have to be this way, but it was made to be this way.
Right.
By the events of her life, I guess.
And so the wizard decides to leave because Dorothy Gale showing up made him realize that magic from the other world was going to pull him back whether he wanted to or not. And so he he gets in his balloon to go away. And nobody knows if Dorothy made it home or not. And she became kind of like a local legend. And Lear and Nanny somehow get back to the Emerald City with the Lion and the Scarecrow and the Tin Man and just kind of disperse or maybe Nanny died at the end because I couldn't find the exact page, but like I know Lear ends up back in the city. Nanny was very old. Yeah. So that's a
really neat ride.
Yeah. Because he was like, how do you
make this rational? Make this clearly two-dimensional, nonsense-ass character into a living, breathing character.
And I thought he did a really good job. I
would agree. There's a lot of texture.
Gosh, and I skipped
the sex den.
The sex den. It was called the Philosophy Club. Oh. Which I thought was very funny.
The philosophy of love.
Yeah. And I tried to compress as much of the history, because there was so much religious lore. We learned all about their saints. We learned about their history. We learned about the shape of the country. We learned about who came here and went there and their rulers and all these things. And I was like, it was an 18-hour book. I cannot be reading the book verbatim or giving you every blow by blow. What made her evil? So I tried to just pick out the threads that would take you to answer the question, how does the Witch of the West become wicked?
I think you did good.
And I mean, so obviously not for children. There is, I've seen some stuff online about where people are comfortable taking their children to see Wicked, but I would not suggest this book for them because it does have genocide and murder and sex and discrimination and crude language. Some tough stuff. I would say maybe middle school, late middle school, maybe high school, especially if you want them to understand any of the depth of what's going on. But really, I want to read the other books now. The second one is called Son of the Witch, and I think it follows Lear. And then there's 4 total in the series, and then this became a musical on Broadway in 2003. And now, 20 years plus later, it is becoming a movie.
That's really cool. Well, now I feel like I've actually got a reason to go and watch the movie now.
And you will be very surprised at how different it is. But you will catch where those songs come from, where this came from. And you'll be like, oh, okay. They just compressed 5, pages or 5 chapters into one song.
I can't wait to be disappointed.
I mean, it's not bad. It's just you have to think of it as different.
Yeah, I get that.
But the author was happy with the musical adaptation. And he was really happy with how the actress who plays Elphaba made her prickly and intense, but also sweet. Yeah. Which I find hard to...
Likeable.
I find that really hard to know how you would thread that needle. But that'll be fun to watch.
Yeah.
So A++. This was definitely a different thing, but I wanted as a Christmas present to you and me to let us do a good book. Give us a break from all of the bad books. Yeah.
Well, we've got another one of these at some point. I might actually do this one second, because this one's going to take a long time to edit. So this one might be coming out later in the month, and the other one first, maybe, I hope.
Well, we don't have to discuss editing to the crowd.
Yeah.
audience. But
Just letting everybody know, this one was definitely recorded first.
So thank you so much. Merry Christmas and happy holidays. And I hope you enjoyed this good book like we did.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.